To our commissioners meeting today. So if you join me in saying the pledge, I would appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commissioner Boyce wanted to do a short presentation on the 41st President, George Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, today's a special day. George Bush is the last president living that actually had combat experience. He spent several hours in the ocean when his plane was shot down, not even 19 years old. And I think just for our county, our board, to offer a little tribute to him and the incredible life he lived in America, the service to his country as a veteran, and a sad day, but a day to rejoice to in what he offered. And thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
You're welcome. Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda? Mr. Schroeder?
Normally do introductions, Ms. Court.
I am so sorry. Let me introduce everybody. We've got Administrator Schroeder to my far left. We've got Commissioner Huxley, myself, Commissioner Gold. To my right, we've got Commissioner Boyce, then Councilor Tuttle, and then Administrative Assistant John Jesuit, far end. So I apologize for that faux pas.
I would like to take off from the consent agenda, remove appointment for Housing Authority.
Okay, just totally remove it?
Remove that. We had a sole applicant, and then applicant has withdrawn their name from consideration, so that is not on the, would not be on the agenda for today.
Okay.
So that's D1, is that correct?
Yeah, D1.
That'd be D as in dog 1. And then we would add that to the announcements, and I have another couple announcements, but we can just talk about those during the announcements period.
Okay. And there's one other thing. Brant Media and Charter Communications would like to have their two items together. So I'm going to put E14 along with E10 so that things will flow a little more easily. Any other amendments to the agenda? Commissioner Huxley?
I'd like to pull for discussion only out of the consent calendar D3, D4, and D5.
So what we'll do is put those right after the consent agenda. Did you say D5 also?
3, 4, and 5.
Okay. Okay. Any other amendments to the agenda? So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Chair, I'd motion to approve the amended agenda.
Okay. Second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on, public comments. David Barnes?
Thank you. Before you start the timer, my comment's going to run about 30 seconds over, and I've been here for hundreds of hours of meetings, and I beg your indulgence to allow me to finish my comment uninterrupted.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm here this morning to speak to you about last week's court cases. To be transparent, I did appear as a witness for Commissioner Boyce. Amongst the judge's many admonitions to Mr. Schroeder, but directed at this body, included such gems as, and I'm paraphrasing here, punitive in nature, charges not supported by circumstances, your own county council says not enforceable, and political not criminal. But my all-time favorite was in small claims where the judge asked, why didn't you just transfer the money from the legal budget to travel instead of spending it on a lawyer? Commissioner Gold, for 2 years now, your favorite saying has been every nickel counts. But your own counsel told you this case was unenforceable, so you found a different lawyer. The judge saw through the punitive political nature of your actions and refused to find in your favor. You gambled away well over 50,000 taxpayer nickels and lost. Should we, the citizens, now pursue you for wanton waste? Commissioner Gold, you've also demonstrated zero initiative to tackle the real issues facing Curry, instead playing the role of Mr. Huxley's handmaiden. From the day you walked into office, you've wanted to give away all the responsibilities you were elected to carry out. Spitting in the face of the voters who twice voted down home rule, you joined Commissioner Huxley in sneaking an administrator in. Shame on you. And it's been 6 months now. Let's reflect on the abject failure of the administrator experiment has proven to be. Number one, the results of the administrator's inexperience are detrimental to the county. His inability to bring the commissioners together forced BOC business into the courtroom in an absurd precedent-setting case, and his willingness to be used as a pawn in an unjust political persecution are but two examples. Number two, the administrator's incompetence allowed a very important union contract settlement to be presented to the commissioners for their approval while containing a serious miscalculation resulting in a material misstatement. By the time his error was uncovered and reported at the last minute, it was too late to back out of the contract, and by a 2-3 vote, the commissioners felt compelled to pass it in order to avert our first ever county strike. Number three, in an August 21st letter from Commissioner Huxley, he outlines a case of the administrator's behind-the-scenes conversation with two commissioners to gain agreement on that union contract outside the legal manner in which county business is supposed to be conducted and possibly in violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. Number four, in court last week, the administrator prosecuted a sitting commissioner for allegations, one of which he knew or should have known was unenforceable, and the other of which, with even a modicum of research, he would have found had been previously authorized, therefore making the case moot. He made deliberately misleading statements so convincingly that the judge falsely believed that money had been reimbursed. His sloppy filing attempted to unjustly extract over $4,000 from Commissioner Boyce, a possible act of fraud. Lastly, and number five, as the custodian of county assets, the administrator failed to do anything to prevent their misuse until told by the judge, "This is your job, lock up the keys." He allowed over $3,300 in direct funds plus untold hours of staff time to be utterly wasted prosecuting unwinnable cases a more experienced administrator would have declined to advance. January 7th marks the first day of the new Curry government, one with a brighter outlook and positive plans for our future. Commissioner Gold, your unrelenting negativity stands in the way. Mr. Schroeder, you may just be doing your job, but with your inexperience and incompetence, coupled with all the nasty baggage you willingly accepted from Commissioner Huxley, there's no place for you in the new Curry. I respectfully ask both of you to resign to allow the new board to begin with a clean slate, putting behind the divisiveness of the past and moving Curry forward. Mr. Schroeder, should you decline, I request this board move for your immediate termination without severance for the just causes and grounds listed above. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. I feel bad for you on that one. That's a tough deal. I believe I'm going to defer to County Council here because he's the only one on this board, other than myself, that I think is going to be responsible enough to follow through with some direction here. And yes, if you would stay, Mr. Barnes, I may have questions. I'm not going to take a lot of time here. The Council Huddle, I think Commissioner Pash is going to be sworn in on the morning of the 7th, 8 o'clock. I think he's the only elected official this year that will be sworn in. I'd like to ask for an emergency meeting. Would probably include an executive session for that day to avoid losing an additional week. Several issues. I'm not even sure if this board, with what has happened the last 6 months, the last 2 years, the last 4 years, that we can even justify having additional meetings. On the 12th, I sent Administrator Schroeder an email on the 21st of November asking for a new schedule, polite and respectful transition between the two boards. I have not yet received a response to that email, which I think supports my concern that I don't know why we would have, with the lame duck is a category or a description that's quite often used. Maybe it's not appropriate here. I think the point is, though, this board has been dysfunctional, and so how do we go about, Council Huddle, establishing the meeting on the 7th, which is absolutely the soonest day, excuse me, that the new board could meet, which I presume and would recommend be 10 o'clock.
So the general rule for special meetings is that they have to occur with at least 24 hours notice. So
thank you.
Again, and I think if it were on a Monday, you would probably want to give the notice on a Friday. An emergency meeting can occur with such notice as is reasonable under the circumstances, and then you would have to explain the basis for the notice in the meeting to justify the emergency and the probably less than 24-hour notice. So those are the rules on noticing of those kind of meetings.
So obviously we have plenty of time to accomplish that.
I hear so.
And it's your view that it would be a special meeting because it's on a Monday?
Well, any meeting that's not a regular meeting is a special meeting, has to have 24-hour notice, and then if there's an emergency meeting, it can be done with less than 24 hours notice, but you have to give the reasons justifying less than 24 hours notice.
And this issue will be on the agenda for today to talk about future meetings for the future board. That's an agenda item which is on the agenda.
Okay, I still didn't get a response to my email, but
That's because we were going to discuss it.
not a surprise. Thank you. So we'll carry on today, and you're suggesting that we can discuss that and go from there.
It's on the agenda.
But you got a memo.
What's the item number there? Under your
E16, Commissioner Boyce.
thank you. So we can also discuss if there's any need for us to have, for this board to have additional meetings through December. I presume that's acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with items 3, 4, and 5 deleted or put
I think we...
out for
Cheryl,
discussion?
Didn't we already do that? Or what did I miss?
We didn't approve the consent
Okay.
agenda.
You
We just
approved the
approved
agenda.
the agenda in
Amendments
normal.
to the agenda.
Didn't we include amendments to the
Right,
agenda?
but not
As in-
approval of the consent agenda.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, we sort of...
Yeah, we
Back-
were rather
backwards, okay.
circuitous. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended with items 3, 4, and 5 put up for discussion?
So moved.
I'd second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, next on the agenda, we'll talk about new hires. This was for discussion. Commissioner Huxley,
Oh,
did you?
so that was all the public comments we had?
Yes. Oh, I have some other public comments, but they're interspersed.
Okay,
the-
so where are we now then?
We're on D3, new
Okay.
hires.
I just had a couple of questions on two of the hires. And let me pull up the... It was on... Put a page number, I didn't put the person's name. Page 5 of 11. It was, and this was a new hire. This was for the Sheriff's Department. And my question was, it was just interesting. I'm not sure how to pronounce this individual's name, but it said the person had an intermediate certificate for road patrol. This is one. And she had resigned from the position to take a position in the Brookings Police Department and now wished to return. And I was just curious. Typically we hear of people leaving and going to Brookings because the pay is not good here and on and on and on. I was just curious what the reasoning was, not to get into any confidential, but just curious what the reasoning would be. I take that as a positive thing where somebody says, I want to come back. And that's the reason, one of the main reasons I wanted to pull this for that comment and that question.
Okay, I don't know about the question. I don't see the sheriff here. So.
Okay, so just to get that on the record. And then the next one was on page 7 of 11, and that was, This was for and I think it's part-time or regular position for the surveyor's office, but I didn't see any reference to part-time or regular, where I do on some of these others. It'll say limited to so many hours per week, and I just for clarity there. So this might be a question for Administrator Schroeder.
This is a regular position for...
Is a regular or an irregular?
Irregular.
So that should show
That should be
something on
marked on
that
there,
form,
yeah.
shouldn't it?
Yeah, I can talk to Ms. Swift about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And this is basically working on monuments.
Correct, I knew of what
Trying
from
to-
discussions,
trying to-
but when I see that on some and I don't see it on some, does all of a sudden the person become a regular employee, because of the paperwork? But it is in a regular position. Okay, those were my only
Okay.
comments or questions.
And what about item 4?
Okay, on item 4 was,
Are you guys going to vote to approve that item?
Oh, okay. Do
Or
we
just
have
all- or
I
a
just,
vote to approve the new hires?
I'll motion to approve item, what was D3, new hires.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second with discussion.
Okay, discussion?
We're not approving these hires, we're just acknowledging.
That's correct.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
So-
Any
second.
more discussion?
Okay, then, okay,
Call for the question?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next, Lane County IGA.
Okay, that
Commissioner
one.
Huxley?
That had, there were 23 pages in this document. I'd just like to somebody possibly summarize, Karen or Ben, one or the other, what exactly
Okay,
is the 23 pages.
so the Lane County,
Introduce yourself first.
I'm Karen Larson. I work with Public Health Services under Ben Cannon, the Administrator of Public Health. This agreement originates with a contract that the state took out with Lane County. Lane County developed a online food handlers permit training, and the state allows them, Lane County, to contract with other counties to use it. So when we decided to enable, people in our community to do their online food handler training, we have to contract with Lane County as the administrator of that. So in the past, they had an agreement with Curry Community Health, and because that means they pay Curry Community Health for the fees that we are entitled to from that, according to agreement, then we needed to change the payee to Curry County. So they have to rescind the agreement with Curry Community Health and reestablish the IGA with Curry County.
So Karen, it was my understanding in reading the information that basically this is changing the payment to us and then we will transfer it to Curry County Health, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just
Right.
bookkeeping.
Yeah, we
basically.
we will get a check from Lane County quarterly, and then it goes into our environmental health fees.
Right, okay.
Okay?
So are we for that, any of that handling? Is this just a pass-through and
That's all it is.
the county absorbs the minimal, I assume minimal time to do that?
Oh, yes, yeah. There's no
Okay.
cost to the
Okay.
county, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, do you want to go ahead and approve this one now?
Okay,
Like we did
why
the
don't
last
we,
one?
yeah, can we
So
get a
I
motion
motion to approve item D4 as discussed.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we've got the OHA, Oregon Health Authority, IGA 154-108.
Okay, this was 35 pages. And if I could just ask it to be summarized for the board, certainly myself, and hopefully for the audience, and then specifically address some of the costs on pages 24 of 35 and 30 of 35. That seemed to be where some of the the dollars were coming
Let me
in.
pull it up here. Ben Cannon, Public Health Administrator. So this is an amendment to the current contract for the financing of public health. It mainly is adjustments to various program elements, the different programs that we run. There's a new program element, 46, which is an access to care element. Essentially, we are being asked to help people gain access and reach out to the community and work with them on what their concerns are, what their needs are when it comes to accessing health care in the county. So that funding is new. There were just minor adjustments here and there, and those adjustments happen on a regular basis with OHA. So that's where some of the pluses and minuses come. It's a net positive to fund the funding of public health.
And approximately, what's that net?
I believe the net was about 4,000.
Okay.
There was 9,000 added for the new program element, and there were some subtractions on some of the other program elements.
Does anybody have any other
Okay.
questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We've discussed the issue. Do we have a call for the question?
Did we have a
Maybe
motion?
we
and a
didn't.
second? A
Okay.
motion to approve item D5 as discussed.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, so call for the question?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, and now we're going to the regular agenda. Item E7 is appointing 2 members for the Fair Board. And there were 4 applicants. All of them looked really good, but the commission is going to have to appoint 2 of those. So
I believe there's 3 applicants, Madam Chair.
I thought there was 4.
I had them all listed
Yeah.
here by name.
There were 4.
I had
Oh, okay.
4. So.
Okay, all right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I would recommend that you basically make a motion for position 1, and somebody make a motion for somebody they want to put on, and then you could vote on that and see where you go with that, and then after that is done and you appoint position 1, you'd appoint position 2.
Okay, I can't remember which positions they went for, but
Can I ask a question before we
Sure.
get, okay. Is there, because obviously I think the commissioners were contacted and certain individuals or an individual was recommended, and I heard, this happened to be from Lucy Labonte, and heard that this individual that she was recommending was from the North County, et cetera, et cetera. So that raised the question, in these applications or in this committee or fair board, are there locations north, south, central county as there are for members of the Planning Commission, for example, as there are for members of the Budget Committee, for another example? Or is it?
I think they're at-large positions. I'm not aware of that. I've not been informed of that. When I look upon the website, it doesn't say that they're local positions.
Thank you.
okay, so do we have any motions
Madam Chair.
to nominate any of these? Commissioner Boyce?
We were in a similar situation a couple months ago on a board. Positions we're filling. I think it was also 4 and 2. We wanted to vote for all 4, couldn't. We did a silent ballot or closed ballot of sorts, and I don't know how to vote here. I just hate to vote against any of them. They would all contribute greatly in my view. So is that something that would take too much time, or a good approach? I think it worked well for us last time.
Oh, let's see. I've got 2 little pieces of paper here. Anybody else got any more paper?
I do.
Put your 2 people that you want. How's that?
And if you're looking at the packet, page 10 of 10 is the 4 individuals in the order.
And does it necessarily have to be for a certain position, or
No.
just, okay, I didn't think so. Okay, I've got my 2.
Hand them over to the
Do
attorney.
we have an official counter here?
Yeah, the attorney is the official counter.
You need my calculator?
I think I'm still waiting on.
Yes, me.
Probably going to need a tiebreaker, correct?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think they were all good.
Okay, so we have Haney with 3 votes and Scullin with 2 votes. And those are the positions then that would, I'm going to pronounce it Haney, and I apologize.
That's correct.
Okay, Hoenie, and then Scullin has 2 votes.
Okay. So those 2 shall be appointed.
We'll save the other 2. We've got big duties coming up for them. If we can persuade it.
Okay, so
So,
do we have
no,
a
those
motion
were
for
the
those
votes.
2 to be
And-
appointed?
So I would move
To
that,
confirm the vote.
that David, I'll spell it Hoenie, and Tim Scullin, Scullen, be appointed to the board. Is that
Okay, do I
correct?
have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, next, we are asked to approve local mental health authority advisory committee applicants. And maybe you could,
Yeah, so this is the Oregon Health Authority has a new requirement that Mental Health Advisory Committee be appointed by the county. This is ORS 430.630 subsection 7. And the committee has been meeting as a Curry Community Health Committee, and is in fact, it has been in effect for quite some time. Future discussions, basically at an administrative level, will work out the details concerning the management of this committee. Items to be worked on will be records retention, minutes, public notice, county website materials, public comments, who's going to coordinate it, and others. I anticipate within the next 90 days, the administrator with staff will work on the details and work them out and share with the county board. This is basically just having this committee move from a private advisory board to a public advisory board. So these will be very similar to other, county advisory boards that we have. So we will manage it at the administrative level concerning, the meetings, and all those details have not worked out. The first step before we work out the details would be for the board to basically take the slate of applicants and just approve them. And then basically between Ken Duque and I and his staff and my staff, we will basically organize this committee to make it functional. My goal is not to try to add administrative work to the county, but we do have to abide by the public laws of a public committee going forward once we get this up and running.
okay. So from you, you want us to have a motion to,
Move to appoint the slate of applicants to the Mental Health Advisory Committee.
So moved, Madam Chair.
I'll second for discussion.
okay, discussion?
Are all of these individuals now members of this committee, active members of this committee? Or are some that just applied and in this changeover? Or-
It's my understanding from Mr. Duque that these are all active members of the committee. We're just basically appointing them as a public body versus a private body.
Well, there were 42 pages on this one, so there were a lot of members I'm not familiar with at all.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Next, we need to approve the sheriff's office private timber contract renewal.
Yeah, so this is the Sheriff's Office has annual contracts with private timberland companies where the Sheriff's Office provides police services for patrol, investigation, and enforcement of state and local laws. Signature authority will be granted to the Sheriff, John Ward, as done in previous years. Agreements are renewals only. There are no changes. Of note for this will be the order. When I look at the order, the last paragraph of the order says this order is in effect upon passage and will remain in place until terminated. So in this case, what I'm asking the board to approve is basically this time next year, or if there's a new landowner that also wants to enter into an agreement, that Sheriff Ward would enter an agreement with a landowner to provide sheriff protection and patrol services.
And just to say, this has never come before the board before, at least during my tenure, and so I don't know about.
Yeah, it's come before.
Yeah, I think these have been approved by the board in the past as well.
Have they? Okay. So basically what you're asking for is for the sheriff to be the signatory and be able to set these agreements up, or?
Yeah, so you can see this document here, 65 pages, and there's multiple individuals here that are dealing with, and you can see the amounts and you can see the acreage, and I'm basically just saying let's just let the sheriff deal with this. He's the one who's going to be, you know, authorizing and making sure that he has the capacity and the staff to do this, and I don't feel that we need to weigh in on it in the future.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
I think it always has to be weighed in on in the future, because one of the things that has to be done, or should absolutely be done on any of these, is that these contracts be approved by county council.
That's not changing.
Okay, that absolutely cannot change. And then depending upon the amount of the contracts, it may well come before the board or not. It depends on the individual contract. If it's over 10,000, it would still come before the board.
Okay.
It's not a time-consuming item, but I think it's a very important item. And I'm assuming that these were all repeat contracts, and that's a question.
That's
because
correct. Yep.
Okay.
These are all repeat contracts.
Okay.
There aren't any new ones in this particular batch.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Ms. Schroeder, it looks like there's like 20 different private timber companies. Is there any companies that were left out or didn't want to participate that you're aware of?
I've not had that discussion with the sheriff.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve this with the understanding that all the contracts go through county council, and none of the contracts 10,000 or over would be able to be signed by the sheriff without board approval?
Correct. So I would motion to reiterate what you just summarized.
Okay. Second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Call for the question.
Aye.
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 Okay, next we've got Brandt Media contract and Charter Communications. So, you're on.
Good morning.
Just to bring people up to date, this Brandt Media provides production and programming and services to the county for public meetings and cable channels. Contract expires December 31st of this year. The proposed contract proposes the services for another year at a rate from $60 to $70 per hour for hours billed, with a minimum of 2 hours billing per meeting. Total contract expense not to exceed $29,000. I will note, if you look on the details, there are this contract basically is billed out on a quarterly basis, so we're not approving $9,000 to be expended. If we utilize that amount of money, that's the amount of money that is approved by the board. There's a couple discretionary items on here, one of which is production budgeted for originally produced county content. So if the if the administrator wanted to put together an update to put it on cable access, they would help produce that and put that on cable access channel. That would be an hourly charge of $75 an hour to basically produce that. Or if county commissioners wanted to produce a segment on something to educate the public, on something that, so when you look at the $29,000, it's not all going to be expended. They'll still bill out on a quarterly basis, which will be approved and reviewed by staff.
In other words, that's a maximum
That's
amount.
maximum. And you might remember that this year we had to do an amendment in November because we exceeded our budgeted amount of hours for the contract because the meetings you've had throughout the year lasted long enough to exceed the amount that we had originally budgeted. So,
Okay.
with that, questions to...
You're on, Charles.
Good morning. I'm Nick
Nick.
Brandt.
Oh, I'm
Brandt
sorry.
Media. No problem. It happens a lot. Charles is the real face of the company, but I just stand around behind the scenes and make sure things work. So I actually am here just real quickly. I'll only take 5-10 minutes of your time, but along with asking for the contract today, I also wanted to give a quick update as to like how this is actually going. About 2 years ago, you all jumped back into the PEG scene after having a complete blackout on the channel for some period of time that was threatening that whole situation. And so 2 years ago, you made this all happen. And we just wanted to give you some statistics on, how that's been going so far, and then look ahead to the future real fast. So maybe this will work. There we go. So we launched Curry County Civic, which is what we call the channel. That's the channel logo that you see on the county channel if you're watching the live stream or the PEG channel. Curry County Civic went live on January 1st, 2017 after a prolonged blackout period that was threatening those PEG funds that you take in. It's now programmed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with state legislative content, your meetings, and educational programming provided by Curry County Voices. Capital equipment is fully funded by the charter PEG fee, which we'll be talking about next. And operational funding for this channel is provided for in the general fund. Just a note on that the charter franchise fees feed directly into the general fund, so that also covers part of that. So how's the channel having an impact so far? Here's some numbers for you. To date, and this is without 2018 being finished, we've put up 106 meetings. We're using the online numbers right now. That totals 408 hours and 33 minutes of government meeting content that's up on your private YouTube channel. We've also put up 1,171 hours and 39 minutes of Oregon legislative content. What's great about that is that recently the Oregon legislative channel that was on cable was defunded, so all that went to online only. What we've done is we've taken that online content and put it on your channel so that it's available to all cable subscribers in this area as well. So we're just rebroadcasting that content. That makes a total of 1,580 hours and 12 minutes of first run content in the last 2 years on the cable channel. So the question I get asked next is how many people are watching? The problem with that question is Nielsen ratings is actually what deals with how many people are watching your cable channel. Nielsen ratings does that because ad funding dollars are directly derivative of how many people are watching. So Nielsen ratings will deal with that. We don't do any ad funding on the PEG channels, so Nielsen rating doesn't care about us. So in order to tell you how many people are watching, we're now using YouTube statistics to tell you, and it's actually a pretty good sample. The YouTube channel, which is now a free service to you, so it replaced the $7,000 service that we were paying TelView for in 2017. We replaced that for you with a free service in 2018. That's the YouTube live stream and YouTube video on demand. Go ahead.
So this means there's 4,389 views total for the 2 years?
Views total for 1 year. So in
For 1 year.
2018.
Okay.
So views total for 1 year, 4,389 views on the YouTube channel. And this is the graph that sort of shows that. So we started testing in 2017, and then we really went live on 1/8 of 18. And this graph is really representative of like what we call organic traffic. In other words, we don't do any marketing, we don't do any type of SEO or anything like that on this channel, and this is the growth we've seen all the way up until when I ran this report on 11/14 of 18. And what that basically shows is the large spikes you see here are your live stream viewers, and then the smaller spikes you see are people watching that same meeting on video on demand. We've also had 1,140 views on Curry County's archive.org channel, which is a secondary backup that we use that also gives us video on demand. That totals on the YouTube channel. So this is a cool statistic. That's 144,615 minutes watched of your meetings between all the viewers. Also, an interesting statistic is that 58.4% of the traffic that goes to the YouTube channel actually comes through your Curry County website. So that means that they're opening up the Curry County homepage and then going to the Curry County Civic page that's on the Curry County website and finding the YouTube streams from there, which means 58% of those 4,000 views is coming directly through your website. Here's some key wins in 2018. We did the full transition to YouTube that I just talked about. We did equipment improvements to the video conferencing and the audio system, some speakers you asked for out in the lobby, and so on and so forth. We purchased field equipment for Curry County Voices for production. The great part about that is that you have first right of use on all that equipment, so if you needed to do any field production at all, you could use that equipment for it. Long-term equipment planning and budgeting for the next 10 years, which I think will be gotten into during the franchise thing, maybe a little bit. We assisted a little bit with the charter franchise planning and negotiations. Curry County Voices launched in September of 2018, and we have four fully independent backups for all county-owned content. So we've got the server, we've got YouTube, we've got archive.org, and we now have a 4 terabyte local backup, local hard drive that backs up all the meetings. So there has been some concern in the past, like, do we have the content? What if everything explodes? I can tell you, it's in 4 places. Not all 4 of those places will explode simultaneously. This is the final workshop for the 3rd cohort of the field production class that's put on by Curry County Voices. Brand Media is contracted separately to do those certifications. We now have 13 local residents who are certified to use the PEG-funded gear that you approved this year. That's a lot because we've done 3 cohorts in 3 months, and they've produced, I think, 14 hours of content that's gone on your channel. And as you'll hear in the rest of this presentation, content is going to be key for the county from now on because you have to meet those content minimums in order to keep the channel going. The good news is we're meeting those content minimums as of now. We just don't want to turn the gas off, if that makes any sense. And now I'm going to turn it over to Charles to talk about what's coming up in 2019. Oh, actually, hold on. I think I've got a couple of just capital improvements here. So here's what's coming up in 2019. This will cover what's in the contract, and if you have any additional questions, we'll be happy to answer those. The first thing we're gonna need to do is the implementation of new digital transmission equipment that's required by the new franchise agreement you're talking about. Next, this required upgrade replaces the analog equipment that's currently at the end of its operational life and paves the way for a second channel that the Voices content will go on. We'll add the addition of a new digital community bulletin board for messaging, and then there will also be some Curry County Voices field equipment additions. All right, and now Charles.
Wait, Nick.
Yeah.
Nice graphics there, by the way.
Thank you.
One of you can answer this. So just going back to the previous contract, and it reads total contract expense not to exceed 29. In this case, it'd be closer to 30,000. Last year, what was the not to exceed amount? Do you recall?
19,900.
So
and then you did an additional 2,000 to that, so it went to 21,900.
Well, I'm lost there because if it was 19, now it's 30,000. That's 11,000.
Well, so the first year was 25,000. The following year, I believe, was 22,000, and then an additional 2,000 was added on there.
No, sorry. I'll go through the numbers real quick. So
All confused now, but that's okay.
that's fine. Let's not confuse it. I'm going to unconfuse it. So in 2018, we're just going to talk about the 2018 number. The 2018 number was $19,900 plus a $2,000 addition. That would bring it to $21,900. This contract is for 2019. It includes some additional services, and an increase in rate as well, which Charles is going to get into right now. So
Thank you.
So you go from 21,900 to 29,000 something,
800.
call it 30,000, right? And what we're going to do now is explain the additional services and increases.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good question. So, Charles Douglas, Operations Manager for Brand Media, Honorable Commissioners, Commissioner-elect, and staff. What we're looking at for improvements for your operations in 2019, first and foremost, is there's been concern, especially with the wildfires and tsunami dangers and so forth, that we need enhancements to the ability of this channel to inform your constituents regarding emergencies. So we have an emergency alert ticker system we're ready to deploy that will provide any information regarding extreme weather, disaster evacuation, other relevant public safety purposes as your police and fire personnel determine. And this will be accessible to us if you want to tell us to put something on there, or we can establish remote access as well for your emergency service personnel to put that emergency ticker on your channel right now.
So have our emergency personnel been trained in how to use the equipment?
Well, that's where the butter gets breaded.
Okay.
That's where the bread gets buttered, so to speak. We're awaiting your approval for the system, and then we're going to go to them and offer that training in the new year.
Okay.
We also want to, again, restore the initial strategy of launching custom programming beyond just gavel-to-gavel coverage of the meetings, and that's where the production budget comes in. And that's the $5,000 production budget that was in the initial contract in 2017. That was mostly consumed by extra meetings in calendar year 2017. That was subtracted the following year, and we're looking to add that back. And that would be county administrator updates, commissioner updates, commissioner and department head profiles, department profiles, looking at each department in the county and what is it doing to serve the citizens of Curry County. And again, more of those enforcement and fire safety advisories, training programs, community briefings. I noticed the headline today of a local town hall meeting on homelessness. That would be exactly the sort of thing, getting outside this room and into the community, we could go and cover with that budget. Also enhanced distribution of county meetings and productions on social media. This was brought up by the board a couple months ago during one of your meetings. We've established as a test Facebook and Twitter properties for Curry County. Those are ready and waiting with 0 posts, because we weren't going to post anything without authorization, of course. But those are ready and waiting for you all to hit the button, and we will start posting as your administrator and staff and the board determines links to the meetings, links to the productions, any other relevant public information you want us to put out there on your behalf. That's something we're offering as an add-on as well. And chaptering of all county meetings to match the agenda items to what part of the agenda you're in. Say there's an important item on last week's board meeting, and a certain constituent wants to go to that item. They don't want to sit through the 5-hour meeting. We've already been putting agenda slates on your meetings as a pilot project for the last couple months. We literally be offering to Mr. Jesuit and your county staff to give him time codes for each meeting after it's concluded, so that literally you could put on the agenda for last week's meeting, okay, item E7 started at the 41-minute, 30-second mark. And then people could click that link, it'll jump to that point in the YouTube video. So they can go right to that agenda item, watch what happened with the sheriff's agreement for timberlands or whatever the agenda item is. So that's one more additional service we're offering as part of this contract. So what are the adjustments? What are the contract changes? Obviously, we've had an increase in fuel costs, certainly, since the beginning of 2017. So that's where the hourly rate for meeting comes in, as well as a 2-hour rate, just so that we're not doing a lot of traveling for a meeting that lasts 20 minutes. We're capping the number of meeting hours at 200 because, well, 178, let's just say, was optimistic. It was optimistic based on the number of meeting hours actually consumed. That's not a total figure that you're paying out the door up front. That's a cap that's billed quarterly, and if you don't have that many meetings, you won't be billed for that. You're only billed for meetings you actually consume. Restoring the production budget. And we're also changing the billing structure for that production budget. That was one of the problems we ran into, is because originally it was going to be a rate based on hours of production. Now it's based on labor costs. So that's going to bring down your hour work for hour paid rate, and I think you'll get more production, more bang for the buck out of that budget with this new structure. And we're also talking about installation work for your new transmission equipment. The transmission equipment, I don't think Nick quite kind of undersold that. That's really important. Your current analog equipment is decades old. It could fail any day. It's at the end of its life. The reason your channel has the visual quality it does, and you can see the night and day difference compared to watching us online, watching the live stream or the on-demand videos versus watching the cable channel. That's really a factor, not of any of the equipment we've installed for you, but this antiquated, I think it was even the previous cable company that brought that thing here before Charter even took over the local cable franchise. So with this new transmission equipment, you're moving from analog to digital transmission, so you're going to see night and day difference in terms of video quality. And that's the last hurdle to adding that second channel. The equipment we originally installed for you at the end of 2016 had a 2-channel channel server. We're ready to turn the key and go on that. We're literally waiting for this last piece, and that was a factor of your franchise negotiations that Mr. Huddle and Mr. Brandt worked on so hard, is that we get this new transmitter in, we'll have 2 digital channels ready to go, and then we can clear voices off of y'all's channel and move that over to its own channel, and that can be then a fully fledged public and educational access channel, and that way Civic is restored to 24/7 only government access programming.
With that, we'd like to answer any questions you have. We went over a ton of information, so if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them, have tons of examples and stuff.
Go ahead.
Well, Charles Douglas just said that Voices would become a fully fledged public and educational, but I think our contract with Voices is just for educational. I think we haven't dipped our toe in the public channel waters yet. So.
The potential would be there, put it that way.
You mentioned a lot of equipment that had to be updated from analog to, I guess, digital. And is that being paid for with the PEG funds?
Big fee, yeah.
Okay.
But they're charging the labor to do it. You can't charge labor with PEG fees. It's only capital. So this includes the labor to do that.
Okay.
What are you asking about the cost from the PEG fee? It's somewhere on the order of $16,000 from the PEG fee for the upgrade, and the upgrade is required in the franchise agreement here.
Louise? She's our money lady, so she needs to ask money questions, I feel.
Louise Colstrom, county accountant. So I think, is there going to be an increase in PEG fees then?
No, decrease.
Because
15
the annual income, I believe, is around $13,000. And this last year with the Voices equipment, we are not really carrying over very much to spend $16,000 of equipment in PEG funds. You're wiping it out, if not being a little bit over, just so you know.
Could you say that last part again, please?
Well, if we have any carryover at all in PEG fees, I think the income for PEG fees is around $13,000 a year
And that's with the current rate.
with the current
I
rate.
think it's 65 cents.
I think it's more than 13,000. I think it's closer to 19,000. And then also, we do have some carryover, even including the spending on the Voices equipment. And
I'd have to look because
Sure.
I don't memorize
Yep.
all the many funds that we have carryover. So
And if you like, I can talk about this on the next item for the PEG.
Yeah, I think it's important that we know that we're going to be able to pay for this stuff.
But if you have additional questions for Nick and Charles right now on this topic before we get into the franchise renewal.
To address your question, last I checked the PEG fund balance, and of course the Voices equipment was purchased back in May, so there's been 7 months of accrual since then. It's our understanding that the PEG fund currently sits at a greater level than would be needed for the transmission equipment. And also, we're not looking to purchase and install the transmission equipment. I believe the projected date was October of 2019. So you'll have another 10 months of accrual by then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Commissioner
that's what I
Huxley?
was going to say. It's you know, if these funds accrue, and that's how we were able to take 7 or 8 years of accruals to put the system in initially a little over 2 years ago. And the same would be expected. It's not like you use it or lose it each year. These funds come in if you don't use in that particular year, which has typically been the case. It accrues. It stays there as a restricted fund for future purchases of, again, restricted type of equipment only. And one other question I had here, this was not, I'll ask, Nick and Charles, but this was on the agenda routing slip. So one of the things here, we talked about the analog and digital, and that I know Charter was really hard-nosed about, you will be responsible for this and this and this in the future, but it says here the new technology has eliminated the expense of the transmission lines.
I wrote that, and now we are, but if we could, we're talking about the franchise renewal.
Oh, it's not the administrator. I'm sorry, it was you, yeah. So.
Right, but right now we're on the
Brant Media.
The Brant Media item.
Well, but we were talking about PEG funds for future.
Right. So,
integration.
do you want to?
No, I don't want to talk about that on this item. I'd like to talk about that if you have additional questions. I think John fairly well understands what all that means, and that's definitely has to do with the franchise.
Okay.
Okay, so any other questions about the Brant Media contract?
And this contract includes the work to do the upgrade that will be paid for by the franchise renewal money under the PEG.
So, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. So we're looking at basically just the hourly rate is the raise here. It's not 10,000.
And the production budget. So you've got the hourly rate increase plus a $5,000 production budget plus an increase that we experience from the dedicated charter line that we use.
Well, just a quick comment, Madam Chair. No surprise, and I love the work that, and I've complimented Commissioner Huxley on this in the past for what this has been for the county. My concern is every time I turn around, it's another 2,000, 20,000, 30,000 here and there, and it's difficult this is a poor county, and we have got to get a handle on some things. So, I'm just struggling with it a little bit, and I'm not sure if it's something we could perhaps delay to the next board. We've got some serious audits I think we need to do here and there, and so that's just for what that's worth. That is something that's just weighing on me a little bit at the moment.
Okay. Any other comments?
I will say a lot of the expense in here is within the county's control. The county can just have shorter meetings, and they wouldn't be expense. So if they don't have long meetings, the cost goes down. You're not actually saying you're going to spend $29,000. A lot of it is, if you don't do production, it doesn't cost. If you don't do the meetings, so a lot of it's within the county board's control just to have shorter meetings.
That's not. So does that benefit the citizens? I mean, if that's the way you save money, that's backwards to me, if I may, with all due respect. But yeah, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Huxley?
Thank you. What a novelty to not have an 8-hour meeting. I think that's...
When have we ever had an 8-hour meeting, sir?
Okay, that's enough.
We're back
What a
to this
ridiculous
interruption,
statement.
Chair.
Okay, that's enough. Go ahead.
Thank goodness nobody listens to you.
Babble, babble, babble. Again, some of these meetings have been absurd. They're not constructive or productive, in my opinion, portions of them. So I go back, that would be a support of Administrator Schroeder's comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other comments or discussion?
Madam Chair, I did put in a speaker slip on this.
You sure did, and I apologize for not
Carl King, Nasika Beach.
acknowledging you. Sorry.
Curry County Voices. just want to make it clear that we take care of Brand Media out of our budget at the Rotary Foundation. We pay Brand Media for those trainings. We pay Brand Media to be available to help with editing. As Nick said, we have 13 people who have now qualified that the PEG funds purchase for us through the county, and we have 13 people who can go in every Sunday for 4 hours, and for a while, from time to time, 2 hours on a Wednesday. If your meeting doesn't run too long, Charles can then spend 2 hours with us in the late afternoon helping us. So none of, our budget is totally different than yours. Our contract provides that we do educational and non-county, put, I believe, 15 or 16 programs on the air at this time. And through private funding, we have supplemented the equipment that private persons have contributed to the cause, plus a website that was privately funded. And so when we do a program for Channel 182, it then goes on to a CurryCountyVoices.com website and can be viewed at people's leisure. And I think we've done some pretty good programming. I won't get up again on the renewal, but I did ask Mr. Jesuit to let me know how much PEG funds have been paid this year. And it's, as Mr. Huddle suggested, it's about it's at a rate of $18,000 a year. You have 2,300 to 25 subscribers on your channel who can watch. I am told that in the North County on the Bandon channel 181, they can watch the programming we do, and in Brookings, they can watch on their channel, their charter system, they can watch our programming. So we believe we're providing public interest programming for well over 3,000 people. We don't pay Nielsen to do our ratings, but if you will,
Nielsen. Right?
Nielsen.
I'm sorry.
In November you received a check for $44.88. In August you received a check for $4,900, and in March a check for $4,500. So again, the PEG funds, yes, it'll go down slightly. We worked with Mr. Huddle and with Brand Media on looking at what we need to keep going. And yes, our goal in some time, our contract with you and with Brand Media run until December 31st of 2019. And yes, before then we will be, once you're up and able to provide that second digital channel, we will talk to you about taking over a channel, and so that we can expand our coverage to include public programming. And thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Brand Media contract for 2019?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next.
Thank you,
Charter
Commissioners.
Commu-
We look forward to serving you for the next year.
Okay.
Keep
thanks,
sending
Charles.
Jesse back, okay?
Don't go too far, Nick.
Yeah.
We're going to do the franchise renewal.
Okay, next, the Charter Communications and Curry County 10-year agreement.
Thank you. So we are 1 year away from the end of our franchise agreement with Charter, and we're within the statutory renegotiation period of that franchise agreement. And the franchise is permission of Charter to use our right-of-way to put their cable so people can get cable. Really, we just extended the term for 10 years, and we're changing the PEG fee from 65 cents to 50 cents a user. The agreement was last updated in, I think, 2012, and we went, and at that time what happened was, so our signal goes from Gold Beach to Crescent City and back. And the renegotiations at that time were that there were some you heard Nick and Charles mention the equipment is obsolete and could fail anytime. So at that time, the technology was that we would have to, I think, replace a cable from here to Crescent City and back. So to do that, we needed more, and that's capital, and you can charge PEG fee for that. So we needed more, so they increased the PEG fee from 50 to 65 cents. And the customers pay that fee. The people who have the cable pay the fee. And technology has improved, and we can put the signal on that cable using this, I think, $15,000 or $16,000 piece of equipment versus it was going to be just multiple times more that to do the cable. So that being said, because we didn't need that much money anymore, Charter proposed reducing the PEG fee to the customers. And you heard Mr. King say we did an estimate of what our capital needs are. These kind of things here, cameras, those things. Also the remote cameras that Mr. King's group's using to produce our public and educational content. And so within that, we derived that we could cover all those capital expenses with going back to the original 50 cents per customer rate on PEG. And really, then Charter said they'd like a 10-year versus a 5-year, and we can go 10 years on these. And so that's what's being proposed, is essentially a franchise renewal with a 10-year term and reducing the PEG fee to back to 50 cents from the 65 cents. And if you have any questions about the technical aspects that I summarized in very lay terms, you can ask Charles or Nick.
Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Huxley?
So the technology then that you refer to is you use later technology to transmit the data over the same line. Is that correct?
Yes.
Existing line?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, I mean, if I were to do an analogy, our cell phones now have the same computing power that they could put people to the moon back in the 60s. And so as technology's improved, make it cheaper, and so we're able to do it for less now than we did before.
You got anybody in mind you're going to send to the moon?
Commissioner Huxley?
Yeah, just typically, the lines have been the technology to change the transmission. In this case, you're saying that the technology is able to still transmit over the old technology line. That's more the exception,
The purpose
than the rule.
of just to real quickly. So the option to replace lines is very expensive, and Charter then has the ability to charge more for those lines, and it just gets into a big mess. So what we did is we worked with their technical department and just said, hey, if given that we only have this one line, how can we get two signals that are digital over this one line? We don't want to move the line. And after a little bit of grumping and grounding and all that stuff that happens, they figured out a way to do it, and that's the 16 or 19,000 that's before you there.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're on camera now. We can watch.
Yeah.
You don't say.
Yeah. This is your system.
I don't like to be on camera, so
You're doing
anyway,
great. You're doing great.
that's basically all it is that we just said, we only have the one line. How do we use the one line? And this works out better for us, and it works out better for Charter. So Charter's actually excited for us to get this done as well. So
Because they don't want to serve this antiquated analog technology either.
So bottom line, all of us Charter members are going to save 3 nickels a month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you'll get a much cleaner signal on our channel.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the Charter Communications and Curry County 10-year agreement?
Chair, I'll motion to approve it as written.
Okay,
Second, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Huxley?
Okay. This is on, and I would just suggest in this contract you highlight Section 5, because that's where you get into the 2 channels. And, Brant Media had mentioned initially where the first channel was black or dark or whatever the term is for, I think, close to a year, actually. And Charter did have the legal option to demand the refund for all the PEG funds during that time, but they didn't, and that's, although that's behind, but when you do get into the second channel, Section 5 has a lot of requirements and a lot of consequences if you start and then you don't fulfill the requirements that are very specific here. Just caution, you know, and
So,
really should be
Charles,
very
do you want
familiar
to
with Section
summarize
5.
those consequences so everybody hears it two
So,
ways? And
so everybody understands, way back in the dark ages, as it were, when we were about to lose the channel, in 2016, your channel was broadcasting static. Charter had the opportunity to revoke your channel, never pay you PEG funds again, and demand a refund of all the PEG funds you had accrued. And then you never get your channel again, probably. So that was the dire consequences if we didn't restore service. As Commissioner Huckley just said, service is restored. You have your channel. You're keeping your current channel, and we're good with that. If we demonstrate, as we are demonstrating, that between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m., 7 days a week, we're offering 70% programming that's fresh, that hasn't been replayed more than 3 times in a 12-week period during those hours, that you can not only keep that channel, but add your second channel. Your second channel then would have the same obligations. It would have to have 70% fresh content replayed no more than 3 times in a 12-week period between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. So that will be the burden upon Voices at that point to further what we're doing on your Civic channel, where we're playing both your meetings and Oregon Legislature content. Thankfully, the Oregon Legislature is going into session with Mr. Brock Smith and the rest of them next February, and we'll have 6 months of many hours of committee meetings to fill your channel for Civic with public information there. Voices will have to really push the boulder up the mountain to also come up with that much fresh content from your local residents and your local educational institutions to then justify the continuing existence of their second channel.
And hopefully the 13 people can do that. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in addition, Council Huddle has reached out to Kerr Community Health and other departments within the county to say if they have, such as emergency preparedness or other issues that is already being done somewhere, that we can just copy and put online. Those are other things that we could do, provided we have county review of them. Correct me if I'm misspeaking.
No, so we are, as you said, there's a need for content that hasn't been broadcast already. So I outreach to veterans, thinking if they had any content that they could put on their health, and then emergency preparedness. And similar to some of these videos that we're seeing broadcast on our channel now, they would be fresh a couple of times, but we're just looking for a content. So.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. We've had our discussion, so call for the question.
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on. E11, the Teamsters 223 approval. Mr. Schroeder?
Kerr County has been negotiating with the Teamsters 223, which is the sheriff's union. The union and the county have reached an agreement, which is detailed in attachment A of this agreement. The agreement goes until June 30th of 2019. This agreement needs to be ratified by both entities in order to finalize the contract. I was notified that the union did take a vote last Friday and they did approve this, so they have already ratified it, and we just need the county board to ratify it. We're rolling over a current contract and amending the contract to reflect the tentative agreement language with the county and the union both approved earlier this month. So the tentative agreement, which you approved in November, has some language concerning how they schedule, and they were non-financial matters, and then in addition, the financial impact of this particular contract is a 2.75 wage increase retro to July 1st, 2018. Step increases are already built into the contract. Overall fiscal impact to the county is $71,500 for fiscal year 2018 and 19. With that, I would seek a motion to approve labor contract with Teamsters 223.
So do I hear a motion to approve the labor contract with Teamsters 223?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I will move to approve the contract, Teamsters 223.
I'll second.
Second? Any further discussion? Okay, call for the question.
Aye.
No?
Aye. Okay, moving on. Revised resolution on enterprise zone. What I'm going to do, there's a couple of individuals that want to talk to this item, as well as some things I've put into the record because we had a couple of individuals write letters, and so I had Mr. Jesuit put that into the record. And so we're going to hear from Council Huddle first, and then we'll have the public comment on this issue. So Council Huddle?
Thanks. And I think I see Sam here. Were you going to speak on this, Sam, or?
I can. I just got off the phone with Tracy, and she got tied up and wasn't able to make it.
Okay, so I'll just start, and then maybe Sam can fill in any holes that I have here. And that's Sam Baugh from South Coast Development Corporation, SCDC. And he and Tracy Loomis is the Tracy I was referring to. She's at CCD. And they were our representatives to submit this application to the state of Oregon. So essentially in your packet, and this starts on, well, anyway, it's item 12 on your packet, and then we'll go down. A good place to start would be the resolution where we submitted our application already. And this is a resolution to correct and ratify that prior application resolution. And so the previous resolution starts on page 19 of your packet. And this is authorizing submittal of an enterprise zone application to the Oregon Business Development Department. So what we're doing is we're applying to the Business Development Department for an enterprise zone. And the enterprise zone is essentially designating certain areas and properties in the county for basically tax breaks if they do business creation and job creation kind of thing, business investment and job creation. I'm loosely paraphrasing the act here. But essentially, again, it's really an application to give tax breaks to property owners who invest in the property and create jobs in the county. And I've seen a lot of the comments from the folks who are here, and essentially, if you look in the initial application, it says, and then so CCD and SCDC were our agents who helped prepare this, but it says in the initial application, designation of the enterprise zone does not grant or imply permission to develop land inside it without complying with jurisdictional zoning, regulatory, permitting processes and restrictions, and it doesn't indicate any intent to alter those processes or restrictions, except as otherwise done in accordance with our comp plan and those type of things. So what we're saying here is this isn't really a land use decision. It's a tax, designation application, and the decision will be made by the state whether to allow it or not. And I pointed out the initial application, and the reason we're here today is because essentially we submitted it to the state, and the state said your exhibits aren't clear, we can't really, and then if to the extent we understand them, we don't think your tax lot designations match the described illustrated areas. And then they also said we can't tell if they meet these distance requirements and whatnot. And then they also couldn't tell that we had consent and concurrence of the different port districts. So what was suggested through the work of Sam and Tracy and Clark Schroeder and myself and Arthur, and I can't remember his last name, I apologize, at the state, was that we make clearer exhibits, and those are found now on page 17. That's an overall map of the county, and then we have each sub area. The northern area is on B1, the B2 is the Gold Beach area and the port, and then B3 is the Brookings and Harbor area. So those we believe are okay with the state. They clearly identify the areas. And then you'll see the letter from Clark Schroeder to Arthur Fish, thank you, it's right there, that explains that we did have outreach and support and essentially co-sponsorship and co-application with the various port districts who are included in this. And then Sam Baugh and Tracy Loomis had a meeting here at the annex, and nobody showed up according to the report, but they had the meeting. And I'll let Sam talk to there's some questions from some of the comments of, was the meeting properly noticed, what and all those kind of things. So really, that's my report. I'm going to recommend, and again, what we're doing with this resolution is only addressing the specific concerns that the state had with our initial application. And so we feel that we have addressed those state concerns, and therefore staff's recommending approval. But I'll let Sam have you seen the comments? I know we sent them to Tracy, but I don't think I sent them to you. Did you get a chance to look at any of them?
No, I did not.
How about, it might
I've
make
got an extra
sense.
copy, and then have the public comment period, and then have him come back?
Exactly. Sam, I can get you the comments, and you can read them, and then
Gonna
you'll also
cost you,
hear.
Mr. Baugh.
We have a couple of speakers here too who probably want to talk, and then after you listen to them and read the comments, you might be able to fill in some of those gaps.
Okay, why don't we have the speakers first? We've got Teresa Bird. Why don't you come up, Teresa?
Hi, my name is Teresa Bird, and I live in Port Orford. I have a couple of questions, and you guys can probably answer this as to how this enterprise zone functions. So, first of all, it says there's exemptions on taxes for qualified businesses, and it mentions hotels, resorts, etc. So, would a farm or ranch be a qualified business? I couldn't find what that designation means.
Okay.
That's my first question.
I don't know.
Because that's what the zoning in most of that area is, so that's why I was confused about why the enterprise zone was there and wondering if it applies to the
Okay,
the
Sam, do
zoning.
you want to answer the question now, or do you want to kind of gather them up and then answer them?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And then my second question I thought of was, is this exemption given on a case-by-case basis when the application happens? Is that application of the new business sent to the state business department and then kind of given by them, or is the county the one who decides if the business
So
gets the
basically, you want to know the
exemption?
process.
Yeah, just wondering how
Okay.
that works. And then a couple of concerns, just that this area is in, and I know what you're saying is that it doesn't change zoning or land use, but that it's in an area that is an estuary with a lot of habitat resources, and wondering why it's there and not somewhere that makes a little bit more sense. And then also that the Pacific Gale golf course is in this area, and just thinking from a perspective of local businesses, and that Commissioner Court Boyce brought up, we are often lacking resources in this county, wondering why we would want a larger business coming into this area to get tax exemptions on local taxes and not be paying into our like libraries, schools, etc. So those are my main concerns.
Okay, thanks. And Ann Belasis.
Uh-oh, she's got her computer.
Haha, my secret weapon. No, I just thought I might show you an image, so I'll put it down. I'm Ann Velisis. I'm president of the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society. We have more than 350 members in Curry County who are concerned about habitat for birds, fish, and wildlife. And I'm also from northern Curry County, and I know this proposal came up and people got very concerned about one particular part. I think Teresa alluded to it, which is that there's an enterprise zone map that now shows that it's right smack dab in the middle of Elk River estuary. So I'm going to focus on that part and another part on Elk River. Some of these questions that have come up may apply more broadly, because this, as Council Huddle indicated, part of the idea with this mapping is to let people see it. The last time it came out, people couldn't really see because the resolution was so small. And when the resolution became bigger, it made it clearer that maybe there were some questions or concerns about, well, why is this area in? You know, do you really want to encourage economic development in some of these areas? So I understand that it's an overlay, and the map has two purposes. It helps the state and the county figure out how to do taxing and how to give these tax breaks. So the map tax lots are needed for that. It also is, the maps also show where the county is saying, hey, we want to encourage economic development in this place. And I think that's sort of the problem, which is, or that is a problem, because I know I got a ton of phone calls over the weekend about this, people concerned about why is the county promoting economic development in the estuary of Elk River? This is a place that is very important for fish, and it doesn't really make sense to do that. I mean, it's one thing if you want to give the golf course a tax break, that's on the uplands, but this area that's very sensitive. It may be the nature of the mapping creates this problem, and so I put forth in my letter a couple of possible solutions to get this, what I think would be clarity from the board about, are you really promoting this, or is this, and John Huddle mentioned that, you know, there is some language in the original resolution that says this does not change zoning and such, but I think people would appreciate clarity that you are not promoting economic development in sensitive areas. The second thing I raised was a piece of property that I think is an error, is on there in error. If you go back to the original resolution staff report, it explains that the properties that were put into the category for enterprise zone included industrial properties, rural industrial zoning. That was kind of how the initial thing was done. There's a property in there that was initially rural industrial. It's been changed to rural residential 5. I don't think it should be in there. I know some people who are property owners right near there who were concerned about that, pointing an arrow again saying we want a commercial development here in this area that's up in a rural and farm area that also happens to have some fish habitat. So I gave some suggestions about maybe amping up in your resolution some way of just saying, you know, we're not encouraging development in areas that are inappropriate. And I have just a little language here I'm going to pass out to you. This shows the original resolution that the part you just read, Commissioner, or Councilor Huddle. And then below is the resolution I had suggested, and I'm just saying maybe there could be some amping up of that. That might help get the clarity.
And if I could, on this item, there were comments submitted to the Board of Commissioners. I'm assuming that you're incorporating those comments. I think, I want to say Rohrbach, is that the right name?
Right.
And then also, Ann, you submitted some comments already. We'll have those in the record as well.
Did you give my comments to?
Yeah, I gave your comments to John Jesuit as well as Mr. Rohrbach. Yes.
I don't believe in the document that I saw you had their email cover letter, though, wasn't included.
Oh,
You had the attachment.
Just say one other
but you
thing, which
didn't
is I
have
think
the
I
cover letter.
didn't cover this issue of was there proper notice. I only focused on Elk River. There may be questions about other properties. Since this map just came out in big form, it's really the first time that it's been easy to understand it and see it. So there may be other questions.
Commissioner Boyce?
You're just going to be around for a bit yet? Mr. Lysis, thank you.
Okay, any other?
That's the email, and I didn't.
Okay,
that was not included.
John Jesuit, did you get the cover email that I sent you, or did I just send you the letter? Maybe we should give you the email from these individuals also. Okay, so do you want me to give you a copy of the email from Mr. Rohrbach, and that can be part of the record?
That is very good information, by the way.
I just wanted to show you. This is the map. I think that the raised lawn.
So she's talking, and for the commissioners, that's found in your packet on page 13 of this item. This is item.
Thanks, Ann.
So it's on page 13, and so what I have, John Jesuit, is an email from Mr. Rohrbach to Commissioner Gold dated December 4th, 2018. There's also a letter from the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society from Ann Lysis, and then
Those were the cover letters that I got.
Those were the two. Did you want to look at this to see if there's anything else you wanted to put in the record at all on this item? This includes your mail. Sorry. Good. Okay. And as well, and this basically is taken from your letter, right? Did you? But I thought you. Yes, we will. But I thought your letter had this too. But
My letter has
Yes. Very good. So both. Okay. Very good. Thanks, Elise.
And I appreciate you bringing solutions rather than just complaints. I appreciate that.
Everybody's
Thank
got
you.
their hand up. 10 seconds. Madam
Moore?
Chair, if we can, just allow any of those folks that testified to have the opportunity again if they need to, okay? I just want to extend that offer to them if you're in agreement, ma'am.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Huxley?
Would you go get back up, Ann, please? I just have a question because I had not done so. Did you go, my concern originally, of course, was the legibility. You couldn't read anything from the map.
Right.
You really couldn't.
Yeah.
But did you, because this was a PDF file, did you go on the county, did they create a layer on, did you go on the county website on the GIS system?
I did, but it was actually, it's kind of awkward because I tried to get on over the weekend and the speed was very slow, and so it was hard to do it. It took a little while to do it.
I just didn't know if we had contracted with Lane County to put the layer. I'm sort of looking now at Council Huddle, but
it's not on there yet.
I would urge that a layer, if there's not, it would not be very expensive, that we create a separate layer, because then they would identify by number, or they could by tax lot, each tax lot on there. That would have saved a lot of grief if we'd had that, well, you know, a year ago, but we didn't, and that's okay.
Sure, if I could. Don't really want to create the layer until it's approved by the state, because it's not going to be the enterprise zone until the state approves it. I wouldn't want to say this area 10. I think it would. That's possible, but again,
even an internal, draft layer, so we could see it, because this opens up. When you can't see, I'm sure there will be more questions. Because people haven't looked at the detail, or I haven't, at each one of these, because this is still just a PDF file, but on the whatever is on the system now will give you huge magnification of that so you can see further.
Okay. Sam Baugh, do you want to come up and give us further explanation?
All right, Sam Baugh, South Coast Development Council. First, I'm going to answer the ranch question. Ranches usually do not qualify unless they are manufacturing something like cheese, butter, actually on site.
So meat or eggs, that doesn't count?
Not usually. Not unless it's actually manufactured on site, taken from one form and made into another form. Okay.
Can that be changed, or is that just set?
It can be reviewed, it could be reviewed, and that would be kind of the same process of going through what a new business would be to be qualified in there. You actually have to go through an enterprise council, and they are the ones that actually authorize the different groups that get that designation for the enterprise zone, and they can do that. There was a question about not doing any taxes, and that's not exactly correct. It actually locks the location in at what it currently is, and so they're still paying the taxes on what it's locked in at that rate, and so then it doesn't tax the buildings above and beyond that for the designated amount of time. Most of the lands that are in this are already vacant. They don't have anything on it, so they're usually not a high tax lot anyway. Most of them. The question was why were some of the areas chosen, I believe. I'll have to look into the which section, the Elk River estuary. It's usually done by tax lots. and where they're at. So we'll have to look into the Elk River estuary and why that was included. Other than that, was there any other pressing questions? Because those were the ones that really, the process of going through. Before you actually start construction on a facility, you have to apply for it and get it approved through the designation council, which is usually a member of each of these special districts. And they will have to give you a yes or no on whether your project qualifies for that enterprise zone before you actually start construction. After you start construction, there is a way to go back and do it, but it's a whole lot easier beforehand.
Is that decided by like the state business?
No, each
The mic?
sorry.
You need to come up to the mic here.
Is that, I just am wondering who, like, does the county have the chance to review and approve that when the time comes up, or is that the state who does this?
No, it's actually a commission of all of the special districts. They appoint a person to go and listen to that. So it's actually not from the council or the state. It's all the funders of the enterprise zone.
So are there public hearings at that time so that the public would have input?
Not for individual cases. For expanding the enterprise zone, there are public hearings.
Okay.
But not for the individual business cases. It just goes back. Basically, what you're saying is we approve this council to authorize anybody, any of the businesses that come in.
Okay, and those businesses, if
that.
they were to come in, would have to be within the zoning requirements and that
Correct.
sort of thing?
Correct.
Environmental issues and
Correct.
so forth? Okay.
Yeah, it will not change any other outside zoning. It will not change anything particular in there. All it says is that we're setting up a special district, basically, that will so a business owner can, instead of paying the above and beyond taxes of what we're building for 3 years, we're able to plow that back into our business and hire employees.
Okay.
Now, there are some requirements to go with it. They have to hire so many additional employees. They have to pay a certain wage. So you can't come in and just open up something, don't hire anybody and pay minimum wage. It doesn't work that way. There are certain requirements to go with that.
Commissioner Boyce?
Do we have any more public comments?
Not on this issue, no.
Okay. Mr. Baugh, thank you very much for the work you and Ms. Loomis did on behalf of Curry County. I spent a lot of time on this yesterday and talked to some really good people, very knowledgeable. And my first thought was to maybe table this and bring it back. But the more I researched and understand, and if I'm correct, having an enterprise zone does not change zoning.
No, it does not.
And I think that's kind of the key thing here. I think, Ann, you put up very good information there. The issue is the low-lying lands and the wetlands, or same thing. And so, and then one person I talked to was very concerned about the coho salmon. And historically, the coho does not have a big presence in the smaller coastal rivers, you know, like the Elk and the Sixes. And my dear friend, who we lost at age 98, he passed last August. He was, as a kid, was fishing that entire area all through the 30s, late 20s, through actually till 5 years before he passed. There has never been a big coho presence in either the Sixes or the Elk River. So I'm feeling a little better about that may not be a legitimate issue. Okay?
You want to come up to the microphone?
Get up to that microphone. Okay, that's fine. Either way is great. I'm very anxious to get any input you have.
I just want to say I think that's inaccurate because there's been huge convening. I mean, and I appreciate what an individual's experience was, but there have been a lot of convenings about that particular fishery, that fish being a threatened species, and there's been a lot of people, federal, state, local, that have looked at our areas, and they actually think that Elk River is the place that has the greatest potential and did have historic runs. So I just want to say it may be it may not be correct.
Great rush here.
Okay.
This is very important.
And a lot of people have put a lot of money into raising money and doing restoration of coho, in particular in the Elk River estuary. The Watershed Council has been working on a particular estuary restoration program. There's just a lot of stuff where people have tried to do that. So I just wanted to raise that. I think historic perspective is really important, but it's just want to put in a counterpoint.
Okay. Wetlands. They're for the enterprise zone through businesses could come before the planning process and try and do something in the wetlands, but the chances of that being approved is just so, slim to none because it's federally protected. This is a large tax lot that the map you just showed us there and is in our packet here. I think that I'm convinced that it'll be protected forever, even though it is within the enterprise zone. The enterprise zone is, as you said, Mr. Baugh, is to bring additional employment, and so that is a big
help with infrastructure. Yes.
Very good. So your request, and I think this is something we can do just about any time, some sort of a resolution that supports as you described there. It does not imply permission to develop in those areas. I don't know anybody that would be in support of that. So I would certainly be in favor of, putting together that resolution. I think would help. Please answer, because I think you probably have.
Well, I think she wanted a proposed addition, not a new resolution. Am I correct?
Here's I haven't. We're here because the state asked us to clarify a few points. The issues that the speakers have talked about, the estuarian issues, etc., it almost sounds as if they're saying, put this part of that lot in the enterprise, take this part of that lot out of the enterprise. I think property is valued in the whole, and if we're going to exempt a property or put a tax treatment on a property, you're going to do it on the whole property, and so all the things they're talking about come out in a different. This is a tax treatment of a property. It's not a decision on uses that are allowed in the estuary. The prior resolution said this doesn't involve those kind of questions, and the current resolution is only to fix the items that the state sent it back to us on, and it says all other terms and conditions remain the same, meaning the issues they're talking about can all be addressed in a different forum at a different time, at a different phase of the application. What I wouldn't want to do is split up the treatment of the developable land for tax purposes based on a consideration that is something else entirely. So I'm not in favor of any changes to the resolution that's been proposed, because it could have unintended consequences with respect to the tax treatment of the property.
So what you're saying is their concerns basically are being addressed in the original resolution as written?
Right. The original resolution says, they're saying we don't want you to make a decision about encouraging development on these, I'll call them fragile resources for lack of a better term, these resources identified. And all this says is any development has to go through all of those resource-focused, land use processes in the future. And what I don't want to do is cross-pollinate them. In the first ordinance, it says this isn't about that, and I wouldn't want to make this about that on this ordinance either.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
Just a question for John. Again, I think these questions have come up now. Let's forget splitting up a particularly large lot, okay? But these questions have come up, I think, primarily, or at least from my perspective, because we now have a map we can actually see where these are located. We could not do that before. And I'd raised that question, or that concern. We could not do that.
Right.
And I guess two, or because it's gone back so far in time on some of the discussions on this, it's been a long project. What was a brief question, what was the assignment? How were all these lots assigned?
I would ask,
originally?
and I would question if Sam was here when it started as well.
I was not even in this position when this started, so I really couldn't tell you how it was assigned. I know they looked at it, and some of them just were not feasible.
Well, and because, again, I would go to that also, if you couldn't see the map then, how could you assign or not assign some, or misinterpret something? I think what we're seeing now is solely because we can see with some specificity where these things are located. I would, not to draw this out for a long time, but I would recommend not tabling the item, but bring it back on the next scheduled meeting, which is 2 weeks. It would at least give us further time. I would like to go on the GIS and look and see how much detail is there and what degree the layer has been developed or not developed. Something in the layer has been developed in order to even produce this PDF, I can tell you that. I just don't know to what degree. And bring it back in 2 weeks. That would at least give individuals time to further clarify, or verify questions or dismiss, concerns, and bring it back. We're talking about something that started in January, or not started, but that was passed in January. That's coming back. I don't see that another couple of weeks is going to make any difference. And we're not talking about, coming back with somebody and say, I've got 50 parcels here, I want to start changing, are they included or not included, but from some of the concerns that have been raised here.
Commissioner Boyce?
I was just going to ask Council Huddle if you wanted to weigh in on that.
Council Huddle?
2 weeks or 4 weeks? Any issues that creates for the process?
Well, I haven't been in touch directly with Arthur Fish at the state. I think Sam and Tracy has primarily. I don't know if he's given us a deadline to respond to this by, but I had one slight question for Sam before we got to that, and it goes to Mr. Rohrbach's email about how good was the notice on the district meeting that you all had on November 26th here at the county, where nobody showed up. My understanding is the state has, notice requirements for those meetings, and
Correct.
Can you just kind of explain for the board what that meeting was, what notice was put out, those kind of things?
I don't know exactly which notices were put out. CCD is in charge of that, but I know she did follow whatever guidelines was issued by the state. I got it from a couple of different directions. I think I got first Tracy at CCD notified me of it, as well as I got something from Mr. Jesuit, I believe, in my email letting me know that it was going on. And so I don't know what other processes were followed, but I know she does follow the state guidelines very well.
Okay.
But Tracy and I both showed up, and we sat there for about a half hour. Nobody else
But that's a meeting for the special districts, the taxing districts, to receive notice of. It's not necessarily it's a public meeting, certainly the public can attend, but it's not a public hearing. It's for the districts to weigh in on the application. Okay.
And usually those kind of meetings, people only show up if they have an issue with it.
Right.
And so they did not show up, so we're assuming there was no issues.
Again, this was just to address 4 issues raised by Mr. Fish at Business Oregon.
Correct.
So yeah, that would make sense that they wouldn't have any real issues with that.
Commissioner Boyce?
So we don't know if delaying this will create any difficulties. Is that tough question, isn't it?
They were trying to get this wrapped up by the end of the year.
We don't know if we're going to have any more meetings till the end of the year. So we have board support here. I'm ready for a motion.
Ann, do you want another comment here?
You guys asked about where did this come from, and I actually did make comments on this last January, when the map had a whole bunch of public lands in it that was an error, and I pointed that out, which I think helped staff to create a better proposal. And the initial, I read in the initial staff report that the categories were heavy commercial, public facility, industrial, rural resort, commercial, rural industrial, and exclusive farm use, and that was, I think, particularly for that golf course proposed area, that those were the categories that were pulled from to create this. So that just gives background as to maybe how this whole thing came to be. And also, I think I want to just emphasize that that particular parcel I also raised about that's now rural residential, I think is in here in error. And there could be other parcels in here in error. I don't know how long this map will stay, if it's like a forever thing, if it sunsets at a certain point, or if there's any consequence if we put in properties that are, unintentional or erroneous.
Real important question for you. I hope it's important. I think it is. And
Is the question for Ann?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
She needs to be up there.
Are you convinced that because the tax lot is so big and somehow that got included in, that the golf course, for example, could actually try and apply for, commercial use in the wetlands? Are you?
So I'm actually talking about two parcels. So the one I was just talking about is the one that was the old mill site zoned industrial up Elk River. That's its second parcel that was formerly zoned industrial that's been changed to rural residential, and so it's no longer really, I don't think it fits the qualifications or the intention of what this is all about. I think it's a mistake. In the estuary, I think it is one big tax lot, and that's kind of how we got to it. The NAPS, that property is one big tax lot, and so I can understand why that's why it looks like that. I think people are really concerned because there are at times development proposals that are close to that are in floodplains. We've seen that down in the Checo that people, so I think citizens are concerned about what would happen, and that's why I understand that it's a tax lot. That's why I was just suggesting maybe if there could be some clarity. As you said, this is not the intent that might rectify things, but I don't, that's just my personal view. Other people actually think that it is
a risk.
A risk.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So we've got two kinds of things going on. We want one commissioner that wants to vote on this today, the other commissioner that wants to put it off till the next meeting. So maybe that we might have some motions to those effects.
I'm gonna make a motion, Madam Chair, to accept this resolution authorizing the submittal of the Curry County Enterprise Zone application to the Oregon Business Development Department and not delay this. I say that with great confidence that the wetlands will not be at risk.
Okay, I'm going to second that with discussion. I'm going to ask Commissioner Huxley, why would you want it postponed?
Well, I think I explained when we talked about this almost
again,
a year ago. I couldn't tell you where any of these tax lots were.
Okay, because the maps were unclear.
They were unclear, and it wasn't that anybody was to blame. They just hadn't been done. Thank heavens the state has come back, or we still would be dealing with maps you couldn't even tell where the tax lots were on it, literally. The state's come back, and okay, so we've improved it vastly, and some of these errors have come out, and I'm just saying is that will give us, because we've had from like Saturday to today, that's if you downloaded the meeting schedule when it was put online, you could have looked at it for a few days. That's it. I'm saying we should if we were correcting things that happened a year ago because the states said make it clearer, which is very reasonable.
Okay.
I think we should take another couple weeks at least and bring it back to give the people that have offered some concerns and offered, which I think are at least one tax lot that absolutely is in error. I think we should take a little more time.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the question.
No.
Aye.
I'm going to say no also. Okay, do we have a second motion to postpone it for a couple of weeks?
I'll motion, as we discussed, to postpone, not to table, to postpone and bring this back at the scheduled meeting on December 19th, the general meeting, which is scheduled, and allow individuals, myself included, to look into the GIS system and to look into other concerns that have been raised here. That would be my motion.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, yes. I don't mind supporting that. I just think there's going to be a question if we're going to have a meeting, any more meetings with this board prior to the new board convening, hopefully on January 7th. So, yeah, that's my concern. So, I will vote in favor of it.
Did you say, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
It's unanimous.
Okay, good enough. Sure, come on up.
I'm just wondering if there will be a GIS layer we can look at that shows the potential enterprise zone sometime
We'll have
before
to-
the next meeting.
Yeah.
Commissioner
We're going to have to find out. That's what I mentioned to Ann, had she taken the time. I did not have the time when I looked at this and reviewed these two emails yesterday or last night, I think is yesterday when they came in.
Right. It sounded like
but I
there's
want to
not...
look at the
Yeah.
at the GIS.
It
There
would
is
be-
some work that's been done in order to create the detail that's here. I just need to see what's there. So it's definitely there's work that's been done on the system. There's an internal and there's an external site.
It would just be nice to be able to download that and actually
And
look
well,
at
you could go yourself.
Mhm.
I think Ann mentioned that the system was slow or the whatever, but you can go to the external site. And that's where I usually go first to see if it's there. I know it's on the internal.
Okay.
But there is definitely detail, and it's not that difficult.
Mhm.
If you have a question, I'd be happy, aside from here, or you maybe get some help from downstairs from Nancy or Chester, perhaps in the planning department. She's on the site all day long, almost every day.
I would think talking to Sam Baugh or Tracy Loomis would be your best source of information. They're our sponsors on this application. And Sam's right behind you there.
What would you say is the best way to go about rectifying, like, for example, that error, which is not really a policy, kind of the larger policy question? It's like, oh, I think there's an error here. How do we fix that? Going through Tracy?
I'm not sure it is an error.
Okay.
You're thinking it is.
I am, yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, working with Sam and Tracy, they're the ones who put this together, and again, Sam's predecessor probably.
Okay.
But the question is, how did lots get identified in the first place? Yeah. And that's a question for Sam and Tracy, I believe.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we're at lunchtime here, so we're going to reconvene this meeting at 1 o'clock. And we'll be in recess until then. So thank you for coming. Going to be discussing the GIS Lane County Agreement Extension. So John Huddle, get yourself together and we'll have you talk about it.
Had some loose wires there. Really, this is essentially an extension of the agreement with an increase in their hourly rate, and just recommending approval. I still think it's very good value. So I don't really have much more to add. We've talked about the GIS functionality today in our topics of our other meetings, but most of the feedback I've heard on this system is very positive. So really, it's just an increase on the rate.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve it, and then we'll get into discussion if necessary?
Chair, a motion to approve the GIS agreement extension with Lane County as submitted.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Okay, discussion.
John, I have a couple of questions on the dollars. And I pulled up I know that the 20,000 was the agreement, the agreement, and then we based that originally on the amount, comfortable amount, conservative amount that we had in the GIS
Budget. I remember that.
And then, so I pulled up the month ending June 2018, because I knew, here we went 20, and then we're going 20 again, so we're increasing to 40. And I pulled up, I'm not sure I understand that first, why we would do that way.
If I know it, I didn't want to go back and forth with Lane County on that. It's a I don't know if it's a protocol or whatever it is, but it's a rule of construction. This is an amendment to an agreement, and the total amount of then the total agreement, including the original agreement and the amendment, is the 40.
Okay, even though you didn't spend anywhere remotely
it's
near
not
the 20, let alone the next 20. So if it's extended again, I don't know if the contract can be, but then you just add to it. That's just a... Okay.
That it's what they proposed. I didn't really get down in the weeds with them on it.
Okay.
That was the way I understood when I read it. I said, okay, I see what they're doing. So essentially, it's really the same terms.
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, I'm still pulling my documents up, but if I'm not mistaken, it's a 2-year agreement. And so it's an additional $20,000 for another 2 years. So I think that breaks down to close to 10 grand a year or something.
I'm just saying, a point for information, we're not, and I don't think we ever expected to, spending anywhere near that amount with them. It's such a, I think, phenomenal price to them, and then their services too.
Sure, and then there's the monthly fee on top of the flat rate, and then the monthly hosting fee, and then the hourly. They raise basically their hourly rate for the work they do, similar to if we were to require them to create a map layer.
Exactly.
They would just charge us for that project, and they charge it to our economic development department and that kind of thing.
Extremely inexpensive, for doing things that we don't have the talent in-house to do. But extremely. Well, way under the 20,000. Okay.
Well, sure, and credit to you. That was something that you outreached to Lane County on, I believe. I can't remember if Carolyn Johnson was involved in that suggestion or not. I know she'd done a lot of work with Lane County on other projects, but again, they're pleasant to deal with. They're quick on their turnaround. They're, I thought on the initial contract, a lot of the original work cost money because we had to export and transport and import, or basically transfer a lot of data packages to them to make the layers. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
Just clarification, Council, how do I understand that it'd be a maximum of $10,000 additional a year? Is that what we're looking at here?
Let me pull my packet up. I'm speaking from memory, and I really don't like to do that. So let me just see. But if you look, I believe it's so it's called an amendment to the existing agreement, and the existing agreement was a 2-year agreement with a not to exceed 20,000. Breaks down to about 10 grand a year roughly. And then the other, so this is an additional 2-year extension, and they say it's $20,000 not to exceed, or total amount 40, but they are accumulating it to everything in the past. It's one way to interpret agreements. The agreement means the total amount under the original plus any amendments. But yes, I believe, Commissioner Boyce, it would be a not to exceed roughly $10,000 per year for the next 2 years, plus their hourly charge for special projects.
Well, thank you. So we have the same means of discontinuing this contract, not that I'm recommending that, but it's usually a 30-day option that you can, notification there. Do I have that correct?
I think that's a standard provision. I can go back and pull up the original agreement, but I believe it...
We're not locked into 12 months, that's all.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, I think it's got a 30-day opt-out, and it may even be included on this, but...
And when we have projects for them to do, we will send them something, and they'll give us an estimate and they'll ask for approval before they do it. So they're not going to go and incur $500 of expense without us knowing ahead of time that it's going to be roughly $400 to $600 or something like that. So we work closely with them on estimations of billable hours.
Commissioner Huxley?
Yes, but just for information, if there's in that agreement, I don't have the agreement in front of me, the threshold, I think, is either 8 or 10 hours. So in other words, like John was authorized to have them do something if it was under 8 or 10 hours. I'm authorized if it's under 8 or 10, I think, somebody in planning. So we don't bog this board down with $100 or $200 or things like that. It's all tracked, but it's over that threshold that I believe is, again, it's either 8 or 10 hours where they basically wanted to do it that way, which made sense, so they wouldn't waste their time estimating a 30-minute project or a 2-hour project.
So, Commissioner Boyce, I was able to pull up the original agreement. It is either party may terminate this agreement on not less than 30 days notice prior to expiration of the term. So, a 30-day termination.
Thank you again.
So I have one other question. How much, do you have any idea what we spent last year? I know this is a maximum of $10,000.
Right here.
Don't mind me.
Here's what I pulled up, the revenue and expense ending June 30th of 18.
So how much did we spend? It looks like $4,900.
And here's the revenue and expense ending October 31, so that's August, September. That's 4 months into this fiscal year.
Okay, so we're at $2,600 approximately. Okay, so it looks like we're not spending the actual $10,000.
No way.
Okay, so do we have a motion to, or did we already get that motion to approve the contract as written?
We already got motion and second.
Okay, so any other discussion? Call for the question.
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on. City of Brookings County Roads IGA Road Maintenance Agreement.
Okay, this is, the county's entering into an IGA with the City of Brookings to facilitate joint or singular maintenance projects between the two agencies. These maintenance service requests will be made by work orders in writing, with both parties needing to sign off on each work order to ensure capacity and timely fulfillment of these projects. Within your packet, the IGA will list the details of it, plus there's multiple pages of the billable rates that would work with that. Currently, what we're utilizing Brookings for would be when we need street sweeping down in harbor area. We would basically be billed out on that on an hourly basis. They would be able to utilize our services on road striping, and we of course would bill that out on a lineal foot. So this is something that just benefits both agencies going forward. We would manage it at the administrative level. The roadmaster, along with the public works director, would basically authorize items which were in their budget to help control that. What we're particularly interested now is, as you're well aware, we're dealing with some of the stormwater systems down going into the port, and in order to alleviate some of those issues, we're going to be trying to do more frequent street sweeping in order to alleviate sediment that's going into our stormwater catch basins and other issues down in the pipes that go into the river. So this will just facilitate an easier operation.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this IGA road maintenance agreement?
Motion, Chair, to approve the agreement as written.
Second?
Second with discussion, Madam Chair.
Always discussion. So discussion.
Is there any, I couldn't determine from reading through here if there were actually any specific projects jointly, or that one entity was going to, or one department I should say, was going to ask the other to do for help. This is essentially just a standard update, is it? Do I have that correct?
Yeah, we're not asking for any individual project. This will just be on an as-needed basis. If the roadmaster and the public works director, if we need help with street sweeping, we would ask them to help us out with street sweeping. their public works director have to say, yep, we have the capacity to do that, and vice versa. If, and this will prepare us for emergencies. Let's say there is a slide or a slip somewhere off of a road. We can jointly use, trucks and loaders jointly. Well, we already have the agreement and the rates all filled out, ready to go. We can just call up and say, hey, we need help. Or they can call us, they need help.
Great.
And as I understand it, this basically allows the roadmaster, the county roadmaster, to enter these agreements without coming back to the city council or the county commissioners on each individual agreement.
They're just a work order. I wouldn't call them agreements. I'd say a work order, basically. Kind of like the IT department. They do work orders, and we have a master contract with the IT service, but staff administrate the work orders that happen within the budgetary constraints of that without board oversight.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
But the rates is a predetermined, it's an existing published rate of anything you can imagine. This has over 10 pages of different rates for, they're saying FEMA schedule of equipment rates is what they call it. I had one other question, or two. Who typed up I guess it doesn't matter, the agreement? Somebody didn't use a spell check when they typed the agreement up.
The order, you mean?
On the
agreement.
The IGA wording. This agreement is made, entered into. The second line, there's counties misspelled. If you go to 9.7, the entire agreement, the word entire has a colon in the middle of it. So you need to,
A few typos
they
need to
need
be
to-
fixed up.
correct those.
This way we have 8-hour meetings.
Okay, yeah, those would be Scribner's corrections. This agreement was proposed to us from the city of Brookings.
So it was their spell check. Okay. And I'll work on trying to figure out how that's why we have 8-hour meetings, but I won't take up any time at this meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Call for the question.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, January 2019 BOC meeting schedule. Mr. Schroeder?
As Mr. Boyce had alluded to earlier, he had wanted to discuss the meetings going forward, and so this is the point where we will discuss this. So on the schedule, particularly for the commissioners, as you walk in the office, there's a clipboard next to that whiteboard that's on the wall on the north side. Every other day or so we update the spreadsheet. So this is where you can find what the agenda items are going forward. JJ obviously works and publicizes these meetings going forward. Here's what I have for the meetings. I have basically, on the 12th, we are going to have a workshop. Right now I basically have Curry County 4-H Extension Service District Annual Report. I would also like to go over the employee manual, which has been worked on since, February this year. I'd also like to have the Citizens Revenue Task Force come forward and present the TLT to the board, so the board could learn more about that and have discussion on that in an informal fashion. And then a Lower Rogue Watershed Council report by Kelly Timchak. So that's on the 12th. Going forward on the 19th. Yes? Okay.
Oh, Mr.
You
Huxley?
mentioned the 4-H. What is that?
There's going to be a public hearing
Okay,
for
so
the annual
this can't
report.
be a
and
workshop.
That's going to be at 9:45.
Okay, so it's a separate...
There's a public notice. Yeah, that's at 9:45. I'm just generally saying you're going to meet on the 12th.
Okay.
So 9:45, they'll be noticed in our announcements actually. So there's a public hearing for the annual report, 9:45.
So there's two
Workshop will be-
meetings then, two scheduled, a workshop and a public hearing.
Precisely.
Okay, thank you.
19th, we'd have a meeting. Obviously, we'd bring back the enterprise zones that you just discussed. I was going to discuss, or actually, we would vote on that. We would vote on the employee manual. We would also look at department fee changes. So Brenda has been working on collecting department fees, so the fee schedule will be adopted. And then I was also going to have a review of all the committees, councils, and advisory boards, which we currently have. I feel there's a few of them that are obsolete or they basically are non-existent, and so we need to decide if we want to continue those, keep them on the website, or just discontinue them. I think that would definitely be something the board needs to weigh in on. On the 2nd of January would be a regularly scheduled meeting. The first, as you well aware, we have the first and third Wednesdays. I don't have anything really planned for that day. I have the snowy plover letter, which that's the only thing I have on the agenda. So with our 2-hour minimum time lot from Brant Media, if there's nothing else that needs to go on that agenda, we probably wouldn't post the meeting. It is a month away, so I'm just holding that date in case something pops up that does need to be addressed. That can't wait until the following meeting for a county board.
Commissioner Huxley?
This question is for county council. I think there's a statutory requirement for appointment of a chair and vice chair of the commission. And it's per statute, per ORS.
Oops, excuse me.
And that's the first meeting in January, is that correct?
I think
Which I've proposed for January 7th. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, we haven't gotten done with the schedule there. We're still discussing it.
But we're talking about obviously taking care of the new board and those positions, so that would relate to either January 7th or is it January 9th?
Well, I'm going to continue with the schedule here as soon as we get we were asked about that.
Well, you can continue, and I'll.
Okay, all right. Okay, so going forward, so right now I don't have anything on my schedule tracking for the 2nd. And the question is if we have to do some sort of appointments or something, that would be something that would come up. Like I said, it's a month away. Things will change, but right now I don't have anything there. We currently have a workshop scheduled for the 9th of January, where we would basically talk about future agenda items for the board. I would like to bring in and have a fire district ban discussion with the fire districts so that they could, maybe we'd come up with an ordinance that would allow fire districts to impose fire bans after the state has lifted the fire bans on, more of a micro level instead of the macro level. I also would like to discuss the AOC road fund invoice and then the OCZMA, Oregon Coastal Zone Management Organization Association. That's a discussion. So those are discussion things, obviously. And then on the 16th would be the first regularly scheduled meeting where we would talk about labor negotiation directions we need to get on with the road department. So we haven't got direction from the board to staff to go forward and finish off the road department negotiations. Floral Lakes land swap, I think we would need to deal with that on the 16th also in executive session due to the land issues. So those are some of the things. Now, Mr. Boyce had talked about having a meeting on the 7th, Monday at 10 o'clock, I believe, for, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, you're looking at reconsidering the necessity of having a county administrator for Curry County. Is that correct?
No, I have not said anything like that. What I have said is that, since you broached that subject, you or Commissioner Gold might want to respond to the challenges of David Barnes today. He represents a great number of people in this community that have completely lost confidence in this board. So if we keep conducting business for the next 30 days as if everything is fine, it's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. And the amount of money that has gone out and to the Bischoff invoices, to the lawsuits against me, it's not going to go without a response. And so,
are you asking me to resign, Mr. Boyce?
Are you offering?
Could I just?
That's why we need an executive session,
order,
maybe. Maybe there's some discussion. I don't know.
Thank you. So,
let me interrupt just one time
go ahead.
here.
You mentioned exec session, and if the board is ever going to go into discussions on termination or discipline or discharge of a public employee, then that's a topic of executive session. So when you started to talk about Commissioner Gold, that's the topic of this
public, but if you want to talk about a county employee, that goes into exec session. So just, that's just kind of the ground.
And that's what I propose.
You asked if he did, yep.
Okay, thank you. Here's just two sentences I want to read that were submitted to the court on last Wednesday. This is a email from Louise Kallstrom, and I'll tell you why this is important, or why I think it's important, and why it has corrupted, county citizen confidence here. Clark, and it is Thursday, September 13th, 2018. So it's 3 days after the reference here. On Monday, September 10th, 2018, I observed that the Taurus that Commissioner Boyce uses was not in the parking lot all day. So apparently, I would interpret that Ms. Kallstrom was watching all day to see when that car came back. On Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2018, during a conversation with Commissioner Boyce, I don't recall this conversation, I'm not disputing that it happened, he said that he left very early the day before Monday morning, attended the AOC meeting, and returned home late that evening. I can assure you that I was at Salem on time, 7 o'clock for the National Resources Committee, which is a very important committee to this county. I do believe that I drove back all that night, so yes, the car was here on Tuesday. The point is, were you trying to elicit spies to determine where the cars were? And can you respond to this email? And apparently the request for her to send you an email on September 13th?
Don't respond. I'm trying to stick to the topic at hand, Mr. Boyce.
I didn't think you'd answer me.
On the 7th, you would like to have an executive...
Are you going to respond to that, sir? And why would you not?
Floor, Chair Gold, you're in charge of the meeting. Who has the floor?
You know what? I think we're going far afield. If you want to discuss this individually, I think that's fine, but I don't think this is the place to start smearing people.
My goodness, Commissioner Gold, of course it is. How else are we going to talk about it? You're covering for him again.
I'm not.
You didn't respond to Mr. Barnes earlier today, and he represents. Did you?
Point of order.
No, I am not required to respond to any public comment, and I refuse to.
You're obligated to the people of this county to explain where the dollars went out and what you're. Look at the judge's ruling.
Chair Gold, point of order.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are running the meeting? That's a question. You.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Who is recognized to speak? You need to recognize, please, whoever you're going to allow to speak.
Okay, I think this discussion is over. If you want to take it up with Mr. Schroeder individually, that's fine. Okay,
I want
Mr.
the public-
Schroeder?
If the board's going to discuss it, it needs to go in executive session unless Mr. Schroeder requests a public meeting on it.
Thank you.
Public has a right to know.
I'm just trying to schedule meetings. If we're going to have an executive session on the 7th, is it what I've heard expressed as an interest? Is that correct?
Let's start there. I'm going to make a motion that we have a special meeting on Monday, 10 o'clock, January 7th, immediately after Commissioner-elect Pash is sworn in and is official. That is my motion, Madam Chair.
Would that meeting include an executive session to consider?
I thought that might need to be a separate motion.
Just
I
wondering.
could put it in the same one if you liked.
It could be.
So would you like me to amend my motion?
Well, it's just clarification to make sure we have an agenda published with the right topics on it.
I don't specifically have a topic for executive session. I was just offering that might be a wise option if we wanted to pursue that option.
If we don't have a topic, or we're not going to notice anything, there's no reason to have a meeting.
Okay. I think I have stated my case on why we would want to have a meeting and not even waste 2 days, let alone another week.
I'm still looking.
So, we don't have a second on the motion?
I'm still looking for a topic.
The topic is county business. I can give you agenda items. It's being prepared to come here ready to go to work on Monday, January 7th.
I guess my only comment...
And I can refer to my other email that basically says I'll be adding agenda routing slip items as we get closer to these dates.
So my only commentary on having a meeting or not, I think if the new board is going to consider the necessity of having a county administrator, I think that's something we should plan for as a county in order to make sure that work and transition is done I think it's irresponsible to basically not plan for a transition period if you're going to eliminate the position. I think there's balls are going to be dropped, and I think there's enough things that we need to talk about. I was just looking for an honest conversation. If that's on the table, let's start thinking about that and planning at a county and the staff that I work with to deal with this issue. I'm just asking for an honest opinion.
And to be subjected to the challenge of irresponsibility back at me, that is, I guess it's no surprise at all.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails.
So
Okay, back to the meeting schedule.
I have nothing further.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
I would request that the email, which is a public record, that Commissioner Boyce was reading, be entered into a supplemental material for this meeting and put on the website.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to announcements. There are vacancies on the Ambulance Service Area Advisory Committee, law enforcement position, Planning Commission, South County, CCD. I think someone turned in an application, so I think we're good on that.
We are good on that. We also need to add back the Housing Authority position.
Okay.
And we would like to advertise for openings for the Building Code Appeals Board. So this is a board which would hear issues with, building issues from the building official. We basically would need five professionals, 2 lay, and 1 county building official. There are 4-year terms. Number of members would be 8. They need 4 for a quorum, and we'd like to start getting that board back together again. And
Okay, so they've been kind of dormant for a while, is that?
we don't think we've had this appeals board for maybe a decade.
Okay.
Only a decade. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
We feel as we're going through with our new building official, there might be appeals, and we want to have a board that they can appeal to.
That makes sense. Okay, so you're going to post that?
We will post that, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, December 12th, there's a workshop at 10 a.m. December 19th, the general meeting at 10 a.m. December 25th, the county offices will be closed for Christmas Day. January 1st, county offices will be closed for New Year's Day. January 2nd, general meeting at 10 a.m. in the Commissioner's hearing room. And I would assume that's if we have enough agenda items to do that. January 7th is Commissioner-elect Mr. Pash will be sworn in. And we're to the point where we're doing county administrator updates.
Time out.
Yes.
Don't we need to vote on approving this schedule?
Never have.
We'll never have. Well, that's a shocker.
So do you want to vote on the schedule?
Yeah, I want to go on record as opposing this schedule, and I've demonstrated the reasons why.
Okay, I think.
So, Madam Chair, I'll move that we not approve this schedule for the present board
Okay, is there a second?
meeting schedule.
Hearing no second, the schedule stands as is. County administrator updates, Mr. Schroeder.
JJ, do we have a time for the commissioner swearing in on the 7th?
I've heard 8 a.m., I've heard 9:30. I called the police office, and I'm awaiting a return call for the exact time.
I thought
8
a.m. was confirmed, but I'm not positive on that, so.
Ms. Bosch?
I don't have a definite confirmation either. I think we're waiting to see it.
Okay, they're still coordinating, in other words. Okay, just wanted to make sure that we knew what we had there. I have a public comment here from Kathleen Wiley, and she wants to basically enter something into the record regarding a public thank you to Commissioner Gold to be extended at the Board of Commissioners meeting. And she basically talks about the fact that there was a planning meeting down in Brookings talking about the new borax property, and there are some creeks that go through there. And they basically wanted to have that energy sources and water withdrawals would not be allowed in these portions of these fish-bearing waterways that go across that piece of property. And she wants to thank Commissioner Gold for carrying through with that project.
Okay.
Yes.
Council Huddle.
So it took me 3 times looking through these statutes, and the chairperson serves until the first Monday in January next following the election. So you would not, even if you had a meeting on the 2nd of January, which is not the first Monday, you wouldn't do any election of officers on the 2nd.
First, okay, thank you.
Yep. So that would not be required business on the 2nd of January.
Okay.
And it could arguably be a reason to have a meeting on that Monday in January after the swearing in.
Okay. Fair enough. Administrator updates. We've dealt with fair share rules and guidance that come in from the state. There was a workshop earlier this year, if you remember, and so you're aware of these requirements already. The rules are effective on January 1st, 2019, but they just came in 2 weeks ago, so the state has been very late, in my opinion, coming up with these fair share rules. Staff feel there's no pertinent concerns right now, but it's something I think we probably need to study. There's a couple questions related to similar positions in different unions and how those the values of different benefits and salaries are weighed. The state has not given guidance on this, so staff will be working on this going forward in the first part of 19. I would also recommend that during our budget period that we would look for and budget for a market survey for our wage scales in the budget cycle 19 to 20 to hire a company to do market surveys for our staff. It hasn't been done for years and years and years, and I believe that would be something that would be beneficial to the county for recruitment and retention of staff. I attended AOC conference in early November. I followed the track for the county administrators. We discussed the National Association of County Administrators business, assessors, taxations. There's a new bill coming out that we discussed thoroughly about increasing revenue, Department of Revenue, by decreasing a percentage of the early payment discount for commercial properties and then directing that money back to counties for increased assessments. As you're well aware, we basically here in Kerr County and other counties that have some of the same financial straits, we don't have, our assessment schedules are 15 to 18 years out. Obviously the states and the local districts, everybody's missing out on money. And this would be a bill that would be address this issue on a statewide basis. So we, as county administrators, we were giving feedback for that. Public safety issues, PERS, we had a session on pay equity, fire, wildfire, do's and don'ts of legislative feedback, legislative round discussions with administrators, state economists and their forecasts for the economic outlooks for Oregon, harassment claims, and then a joint meeting with the County Planners Association and the administrators. So, for information's sake, I investigated requirements for a no jake breaking signs in Langlois for a group of citizens that have reached out to me. Since the village of Langlois is not an incorporated city, ODOT would be the overseer of this particular requirement. And this is just general information in case anybody ever has any inquiries about it. There's 6 residents need to file 4 separate complaints when jake breaking occurred. That would trigger an engineered study, which could be done. The state patrol would need to agree to enforce any such requirements, and then the citizens would need to pay $600 for the signs. And as a side note, it is legal to use jake breaking in the state of Oregon as long as it is...
What's jake breaking?
Okay, so you ever hear going down a hill, you hear these trucks and they...
Okay.
It's compression release.
Yes.
Okay.
So jake braking is legal in the state, except it has to be muffled jake braking. You can't have an unmuffled jake brake. So that being said, this group of citizens, I reached out back to them and I said, you're probably not going to be successful at this, so I would just live with it. We had a couple citizen revenue task force meetings. We're going to schedule, like we said earlier, with the board on the 12th. Some of the members of the committee are going to come and give feedback and summaries of what is done and what are the next steps. If the board does give direction on the TLT with minor revisions to staff, we would look to put the TLT on the ballot or on the vote for the 19th of December, and then basically have the first meeting in January. And the requirements for getting, I'll go over this next week, but there's timelines for getting on the May ballot is relatively soon in the beginning of the year. So if they're going to go for that issue, we have to get it in front of the board and get the details worked out. And I want to build enough time in case the board wants to change the ordinance of these two issues.
Commissioner
Can I
Huffley?
ask you just a quick question on that particular subject?
Certainly.
How many of these task force meetings have you had, 2 or 3?
3. 2? I think 3, but 2 or 3.
2 or 3?
Yeah, 3.
Well, that was pretty quick to make that decision, have that discussion and make that decision already. Interesting.
We're efficient.
Or you come in, well, already made up this decision.
These were long meetings.
Oh, long meetings.
Not as long as yours, but
Oh.
long.
Okay.
We'll go over this next week. Staff is working on the stormwater systems in the Brooking Port area. This involves water coming off the Harbor Hills area, 101, flows into county catch basins and then into port pipes into the river. As you're well aware, we have had an issue with DEQ on some sediment that was flowing from these from the ports pipes. Staff is working on aligning common interests among the different stakeholders. So we're going to be working together with Mr. Campbell, who's a liaison for the governor's office, to try to get people together, because we're just one little slice of this problem, and everybody really needs to come together to try to solve and keep these pipes clean so that water can flow through, and hopefully they might be able to have settling ponds or retention ponds so not as much water flows right from surface into the river. Contract with CCE CIT services are going to be continued with 2019. There's just a built-in 2.5% increase. This is a 5-year contract which was started on January 1st of 17. So there's 3 years left on that particular contract. That's just a built-in inflationary issue. Staff is researching park reservation online platforms. We'll be picking from one of the 3 vendors that we have sourced out on that system. I don't believe it's rises to the level of the county board, but we will basically make a recommendation. This will be basically so people can, for Boyce Cope or other parks that we have, they could do their reservations online using a credit card. Staff is working with Beth Barker Hideo, readying for their occupancy starting on January 1st for the Gold Beach Resource Center. That's a Colvin building across the street here. We've had discussions with staff at department head meetings concerning some concerns that they had. We'll be dealing with these issues on an administrative basis, on a case-by-case basis. I don't believe it rises to the level of doing an amendment to the lease. And we've been in discussions at staff level to deal with department head concerns on this.
Commissioner Huxley?
I was at one of the when it was my turn for the management meeting, and I think it was the day that you were gone in county council, and I thought some of those issues that were being raised were of significant concern. They weren't just some minor little thing. So I would agree to disagree that it shouldn't come back to the board. I thought there were pretty significant concerns that were brought up by some of the officials.
Council Hull and I are working together with Beth on this issue. One issue we are going to post the parking lot north of the Colvin building with no overnight parking signs. So, and which will equate with our current ordinances concerning no camping. So we currently don't feel there's any issues that would be significant enough to change the lease. That's not to say it won't be in the future, but we feel at a staff level we can administer this. We are continuing discussions with CCH and environmental health concerns with our code enforcement officer. There's been a series of spam emails hitting the county asking for bitcoins to stop something from happening. IT is working on blocking this, but I remind staff not to click in any suspicious emails or reply to bogus inquiries. Surveyor's report just came in this morning. I think I'll just attach that to a future meeting. Code enforcement, we had 10 new cases of various issues: abandoned vehicles, multiple RVs on single properties, junk, encroachments, trash, zoning. Dave's working with our building official, working with CCH and environmental health, working with our planning department and the sheriff's office. This position is multifaceted, and in my opinion, we need additional hours in our positions if we have a goal of having citizens abide by state and local rules. There seems to be a huge deficit in code enforcement in this county, and if we want to address it, we're going to have to add resources to that, in my opinion. Dispatch study, we met in November. We've formed a subgroup. We're going to have visits on site by the university on the 11th and the 12th, and they're going to be doing tours of our facilities, not in Brookings and in Gold Beach here, and start analyzing staff and technology issues. If we wanted to, what would it take to combine these dispatches between the city and the county? Got a notice from University of Oregon also on population. The new data came out for Curry County. I think one of the interesting things is we have the highest percentage of people of over 65 in the state. So as a policy-making board, as you're thinking about what kind of services you're going to be providing in the long range, I think that's going to really affect population growth, schools, other districts. You're basically looking at around 22,805 people, and you have the highest percentage of over 65 of 33% of our population is over the age of 65. Some counties are in the teens. So it's a very, very interesting data that came out, and our population is not growing very much. It grew by 110 people over the past year is what their estimates are.
Commissioner Huxley?
Just a point of information. I think it was Wheeler County that was number one and Curry was number two, so they may have traded places.
Yeah, Wheeler was...
They've only had like 1,000 people or something.
Yeah, they're 32.6%.
They were number one
a
couple, 3 years ago.
You have now
so
surpassed
they've
them.
changed. Yeah.
Wheeler County only has 1,480 people.
So it's not too hard to change a percentage point on that.
I started working on staff evaluations. I have, 10 or 12 staff that report to the administrator, and I'm going to try to get those done in this next month, and especially if the board's going to consider the position of a county administrator, I would like to at least have the staff have the luxury of having their evaluations timely and done. I'm going to just read something. I'll enter this into the record. Last week, the court hearing regarding Curry County versus Court Boyce was held by the Honorable Judge Combs presiding. To remind the commissioners and the public, this is a Curry County action. It wasn't an administrator Schroeder action. Staff was representing Curry County and carrying out the direction of county board. This is a summary for the public. 2 issues were decided. The first was a small claims case, which sought reimbursement for excess travel which Commissioner Boyce incurred during the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018. court found in favor of Commissioner Boyce in this case. Even though Commissioner Boyce was present at the meeting when the vote was passed and notified and instructed not to travel and incur any more travel expense on December 12, 2017, the county did not stop him from traveling. Hence, there is not enough due process. Commissioner Boyce could not have expected that he would be sued for excess travel when the county did not take any sufficient action to stop him from continuing traveling outside of the available budget. Judge indicated that Mr. Boyce continued to violate the travel policy. The administration should have prevented him from utilizing a county vehicle by physically making the keys unavailable to him. I was not here during that time and unaware why vehicles were continued to be allowed when the budget had been exceeded. Nonetheless, travel continued. Commissioner's travel budget is currently overspent in 2018 and 19, so per the guidance from the judge, administration has collected all the keys for the commissioner vehicles and will not allow any travel unless there is a budget amendment. Staff is also instructed by the court to collect all county credit cards from commissioners. If they're not returned to staff by Friday, they'll just be canceled. The judge indicated these measures would be what he would consider as appropriate steps to limit travel. Second issue was a citation for travel in violation of the elected officials travel ordinance. The travel was enacted on September 5th with violation on September 10th. The claim was that Commissioner Boyce did not seek board approval to travel out of the county by the full board, which is required by the ordinance. Judge felt there was not enough time or warning and that such a violation would result in a citation. Hence, the ticket was dismissed in Boyce's favor. The judge, however, indicated to Commissioner Boyce that he needs to follow the ordinance going forward and request permission to travel out of the county by the full board and accurately fill out and return daily tracking sheets for any cars. Administrative staff can only enforce what county board adopts. If the ordinance is changed or repealed, staff will enforce a new policy or an ordinance accordingly. If the board approves a supplemental budget, keys to the cars and credit cards will be returned to the commissioners. That's the end of my report.
Okay.
And that goes into the record. Can we get a copy of that, or?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
If I may,
Commissioner
Madam
updates.
Chair, if I may ask some questions, I'd rather not wait till Commissioner comments. It probably doesn't matter, but no, I think I'd prefer to go now, if I may. So
I'll tell you what, why don't we just switch your comments to right now, and we'll put Commissioner Huxley second.
no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to respond to Mr. Schroeder now.
Well, that's fine. You can respond.
But then I'll have my commissioner comments in the sequence that's on the agenda.
Oh,
Administrator Schroeder, that was a nice spin, and I'll tell you why I believe that. The judge asked you specifically once, maybe twice, how was Boyce's travel not a benefit to this county? Sir, you didn't have an answer. He also made the statement, he never said take the credit cards. My credit card has averaged $110 a month since I became commissioner. He did suggest that that was an option for you. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the transcripts will clearly bear out what is accurate there. The judge's rulings, he used terms like, see if you agree here, possibly punitive, potentially defamatory. When he come into that courtroom and realized not only had I asked for reimbursement, but had not received reimbursement, and realized that I spent up to almost $3,000 of my own money, he came into that courtroom because of the wording, the language of that claim, thinking that I had been reimbursed $5,500. And he said, how was Mr. Boyce personally enriched by using these automobiles? So you do whatever you got to do with the credit cards and the keys. I've taken care of the transportation because my only other option is to eliminate other county travel. And I don't think that's best for the citizens of this county. I may come back. Excuse me, I have just one more question. Did you ask Accountant Kallstrom to watch the cars for you in any fashion?
I did not.
Okay. So why did she report to you 2 or 3 days later?
Well, because I asked her if I was gone that day, and I knew you went up to that meeting, and I knew you didn't request board approval, so I asked Ms. Kallstrom if she...
Why would you ask her?
Point of order, Chair, point of order.
You know, I leave here at 2 o'clock in the morning to get to that meeting by 7 o'clock and then come back that night.
Okay,
I want
let's,
excuse me, I want the citizens to know
It's your meeting.
what effort is involved here. To anybody that might be
okay,
doing
I
any of
think
this.
we've heard it all
Point of
now.
order.
Oh,
Okay, moving on.
that is
Commissioner
disgraceful,
updates.
Madam Chair. You've
I
heard
know.
it all? You
Yes.
just cut me off. Why do you continually do that?
Because you keep
No
going
wonder the
on
people
and
want-
causing problems here.
Yeah, I'm causing problems. You just sue me and spend $100,000 or whatever
Okay.
the total is.
Mr. Huxley, you have the
Yes, Mr.
floor
Huxley, save
to
me.
do your update.
First update is you have the authority to recess or adjourn this meeting if it's out of order, and I would ask that you please be more forceful in the future in controlling the meeting. On so it's what, 153. Let me go to this first. Well, I see we have two people in the audience who are members of the Budget Committee. We have 3 commissioners sitting here, so that brings that we have 5 members of the Budget Committee present here that heard and decided on the budget in May of this year. Okay.
This
When
is not a budget committee meeting, though.
Pardon me?
This is not a budget committee meeting.
I didn't say it was. I said we have present here 5. Okay, so it's appropriate for me to address some comments here.
Okay.
And enter into the record some documents. In the Budget Committee meeting that was held on October 31st, we approved, although we have not seen to sign, we have not seen those approved corrections or additions, which I understand are done. They've been done for about a week. So those still need to be signed. So what I'm asking here for 2 things when I get through is to join me hopefully in directing Administrator Schroeder to see that these things are distributed.
Are you
To
talking
schedule
about the
into a
minutes?
meeting, yeah. So
Okay.
What the committee decided, I believe the vote was 5-1 on October 31st, was to defer the approving the minutes for the 2018 Budget Committee meetings. And at the time, staff was going to be directed to send copies of all the minutes, the draft minutes for those meetings for review and comment back. And Administrator Schroeder asked at the time that the members of the committee get back with any comments they had by December 1st. December 1st happened, it was just picked December 1st, which was fine. That happened to be a Saturday, but so what? I submitted 3 days or 4 days before December 1st, I submitted red text, revisions to the minutes from my perspective and cited times and quotes and so forth and so on. I checked with Administrative Assistant Jesuit the other day, and he said that I asked him, had any other comments been received from any other committee members? He said no. So what I'm asking today is, number one, I want to enter into the record exactly the documents that I sent to Administrative Assistant Jesuit, and ask that they be put on as a supplemental material for today's meeting on the website, individually, not just bundled as 50 pages and it's potluck. And I've identified each one separately. And I would ask, I would like to get approval from at least one commissioner to have a meeting scheduled on the 19th, which would be the next general meeting, okay?
Okay.
Or even if, you know, I don't know, again, I haven't talked with schedule-wise with anybody here as far as availability, but I can see that at least the three of us are available.
So you want a budget meeting on the 19th?
Well, a budget meeting to review and approve the minutes for 2018 while I'm still here as a sitting commissioner.
Okay.
On it. And I think that would be reasonable, you know, for the board to do, or request that the board help direct, you know,
I think it could only be
Administrator Schroeder.
I think it could only be a request to that budget committee, because the board, you know, doesn't set the schedule for the budget committee. The budget committee does. They had meetings and stuff. So
That's correct.
We're not doing budget committee business here.
No.
You're making a request that the administrator try to
Contact
schedule.
and try and arrange a meeting on the 19th. That's correct.
I thought they had already had a pre-established schedule of meetings for that group. They're just going to meet quarterly and
Well,
So is this in addition?
Correct, but because of the circumstances here, I'm asking that a meeting be held because I was the only one to submit revisions, significant amount.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my request. So do I have a second?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on that one?
Do we have a consensus then? Is that
We
where
have
you're
a
at?
consensus, that's correct.
So no motion required?
No, I don't think with consensus that we need a motion.
Fair enough.
Additional although this has been out now for about a month, this would be another request that this be included into the public record, and again as a separate document entered on the website. These are the new final PERS employer contribution rates for the next biennial. Month or so. I downloaded it over the weekend. And it is exactly as in the range that that their estimated ones were in the 4 to 5% increase of gross payroll. Curry County was right in there. I've highlighted Curry County on this. But this is the entire 18-page document. Douglas County, and I put the note front and back so that they don't miss the back. I think it was Douglas County, in a quick glance, their employer contribution rate for Tier 1, Tier 2 is almost 40% of gross payroll. I think it was 38 and change.
Pretty high.
Okay. I'll hold on this one. This one, I'd like to enter this into the public record also, and with the same request I put down here as a separate document. This was to Administrator Schroeder in regards to response, an email response regarding a commissioner travel. This is dated November 28th. My response was November 28th. And it had to do with, I think, some of the recommendations that the judge alluded to in his comments that should be done immediately. And that we get into cars, but also to credit cards. Credit cards, and I've addressed this in prior discussions with individuals. Credit cards should either be suspended. I don't know how that works. You know, there's too many people have too many credit cards around here, in my opinion, for $5,000 per credit card. But they should be suspended or destroyed. Here's my credit card. I told you in the email, my cut-up credit card. Also, what should be suspended should be access to these ODOT fueling tanks or any fuel for vehicles. It's a cost that should be suspended. Those are, yeah. I don't think I need to touch base on this other one. Let's see. Oh, last comment on the you made reference to the state appraised property across the street from the high school in Port Orford. I know when you had updated us last on that, you said they expected to have that in December. Do they have that appraisal yet?
The appraisal is into the state. They had an executive meeting on November 28th.
Okay.
And Cammie has not gotten back to me concerning any direction so my gut guess is they are not ready to offer a proposal to us. So I do not have the appraisal. I'll be bringing this forward in January to the board.
Would you contact and just ask if they have it to squeak, the squeaky wheel?
Okay.
Thank you. And just let us know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce, your report?
Thank you. Last Wednesday we had a homeless public forum in Brookings. About 80 people attended. About over half were very concerned about transient people actually being somewhat attracted to Brookings or even Curry County. So a lot of people were able to vent a little bit. Different reports. Overall, I think it was very positive. There was a notion that the people I asked to kindly participate on the panel were somehow crediting themselves, including me, as a no, not at all. But it was people who really care, and I don't have any definite plans. I'm watching closely what Brookings is doing. I think they're making some very wise choices, doing their best to kind of get ahead of this issue a little bit. I went Monday night to the Brookings City Council workshop for possible zoning changes so that there could perhaps at some point in time be almost small little communities in and on the church property. So I will keep the future board abreast of that. I don't want to give a name right now, but I'm working with a former county commissioner, 8 years, and prior to that, a 10-year larger city Oregon mayor I've developed a relationship with that is retiring, and subject to the new board's approval and the possibility of working in agreement with him, he would be here two days a week to and this is very tentative, of course, but he would be here a couple days a week to look at the Curry County financial issues. He's very good, very astute in natural resources, which is critical to the county when it comes to fishing and farming, forestry, tourism. I abbreviate as fun. So if he remains interested, perhaps I'll have something a little more in the next phase to report to the board. Maybe the end of this month, perhaps early January. Last night I went to the Brookings Veterans Town Hall, the new facility there on North Railroad. Good news, bad news. We have interim Roseburg VA Director David Whitmer is leaving. He has done an incredible job. He has really worked hard and has been successful with his staffs in North Bend, Roseburg, Gold Beach, Brookings, I'm sorry, and he's just made a real challenge and been very effective at overcoming some of the issues that veterans have had with just slow appointments, with wrong medications. Just to hear the vets last night talk at the meeting, they communicated and expressed that they have just really seen some incredible progress and problem solved. Certainly not that everything's done yet. So we're anxious very much to meet the new director. He or she will be here within a month. He possibly gave the name. I probably missed that. But the big news, the good news is there is a new VA facility with probably going to have close to 100 small houses. Will be going in at Douglas County. A big improvement, increase in the whole medical program that is available to the vets, and I think that's going to be a tremendous, it's still a 3.5-hour drive from Gold Beach to Roseburg, of course, but it is being accepted, and there's just a lot of tremendous excitement and enthusiasm on what this will mean for the entire southwest corner of Oregon. It's probably going to employ, it's a maybe a $22, $3, $4 million, if I understood correctly, facility that they have planned. So, yeah, that's very good news. Roadmaster Christensen and I took a late afternoon, very intense ride up to Bosley Butte about 2 weeks ago. That guy's he's an incredible navigator out in the back roads, and we went up to Bosley Butte to look at the dish cover that had been damaged. That Administrator Schroeder had reported that Day Wireless would be repairing, what the costs were, and I was concerned about that. And I can see now why their estimate, they've got to do some serious climbing and safety gear, and we just have our fingers crossed that this cover with I've got pictures, I didn't put them up on the screen anyway. It's got a hole like this. We're hoping that not too much rain gets in there before the repair can take place, and possibly short out some of the circuits or whatever that would be inside that dish. And I have recruited Roadmaster Christensen I've been to 2 of the other 5 facilities, towers, lookouts that we have in Curry County, so he and I are going to make, but it's been a long time ago since I was there, so we're going to make a time to go view those and take pictures and just learn what we can, and try and position the county and do our part to find financing, because this is emergency communication that we're talking about, and we've had a lot of those discussions in our meetings, and I'm just hoping that there's a way we can all participate and hopefully contribute. 2 weekends ago, I took new Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest Supervisor Merv George upriver, spent almost 3 days with him, one night at my old lodge, Paradise Lodge, and then one night at my home in Agnes. And every time I'm around him and question his background, his outlook, his philosophy on national forest management, I get more and more confidence. He is very approachable. He is very experienced, and of course the Rogue River is part of his 6-county district, and the river management of the wild section in particular, and as it relates to Paradise and some other private property there. So he had never been above Foster Bar, 6 miles above Agnes, and we had a wonderful fall trip, and I didn't scare him too bad, and he's an old boater anyway, and I shouldn't say old, he's 15 years younger than me, but I'm just, the point I want the public to understand is that I believe that I'm doing everything I possibly can to position the county so that we have a contribution in the say of how our federal forests are managed, how our public lands are administered, and it is a huge issue. And also going with us was Mike Robinson of the Coos Curry Forest Protective Association. And when you get those two together, it is unbelievably educational on how we can keep our roads open, how we can hit these fires early. It's a new day. And so, again, I am very, very optimistic of how we can build our forest back and prevent the catastrophic wildfires, which is my last item, Madam Chair. And I hope I'm wrong about this, but if you just look east of us, how dense the forest is in Oregon, especially this part of Oregon. Curry County's been hit with, in the last 18 months, between Josephine County and us, we have lost within the 7 biggest fires in that 18-month period. We have lost almost 450,000 acres. Cost to fight a staggering amount of devastation. And what I want the entire state of Oregon, and I seem to have people emailing me and phoning me all the time, please take the lead on this. Curry County's been hit harder than any of the 36 counties in the state of Oregon. And when you compare the fuel load, if you just want to use the measurement per acre, compare the fuel load to what we have in California, it is a scary thing. And again, I will emphasize, I hope I'm wrong on this because it can be overstated, but I think Oregon has got a tremendous risk if we don't start reducing the very best we can, eliminating ground fuels, the kindling that explode and kill even our normally fire-resistant old growth. So, and not to overlook the damage in California, the devastation, the absolute heartbreaking things that have happened down there. They have had their 2 worst fire seasons consecutively as well. Thank God we have not lost any lives, but they have lost well over 100 in that 19-month period and pushing slightly above 20,000 homes. So my concern is for Oregon, not just the rural areas like Brookings and Agnes, but the suburbs that that are really at risk. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of fires, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I've got a report, so I'll just send these over for the records. On Sunday, November 11th, there was a fire in the Cape Ferrelo area. This fire started with a slash burn on South Coast lumber property and got out of control. All the local fire departments responded along with some local people helping with brush cutting and road clearing. This fire could have been very devastating if the winds had not died down and the fire departments had not responded quickly. I was contacted by a number of firefighters and they were concerned with the no-burn restrictions that were lifted too quickly. And they wanted the no-burn restrictions to be reinstated until the winter rains started in earnest. I contacted Coos Curry Forest Protection District and was told that this would not be happening. The firefighters further requested that the fire districts that are in the unincorporated areas of the county have the ability to institute a no-burn restrictions within their fire districts and would like the county to look at setting up an ordinance to accomplish this. And I believe on the January 9th workshop this is going to be discussed. Brookings now has the ability to enforce no burn restrictions within the city limits. On January 9th at the workshop, Coos Curry Forest Protection District and the county fire district representatives will be invited to participate and give input for this possible ordinance. Also on November 11th, I received many phone calls from my neighbors in the Cape Ferrelo area that were very concerned about the fire, and I also saw pictures of the fire and it was pretty bad. There were many posts on Facebook about the fire, and many of those turned out to be erroneous, and they wanted to know exactly what was happening. I called Jeremy Dumeyer, and he was very helpful and aware of exactly what was happening. I was then able to return phone calls to all of the individuals that had called me and let them know exactly what was happening and told them to spread the word and let their friends know exactly what was happening. I would just like to thank Jeremy publicly for his quick response and his help. He was doing what he was supposed to do in an emergency situation, and I feel very strongly that he was effective in doing his job as emergency manager for the county. So that's my report. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.